All right, it's December 22nd at 5:30. We'll open the Select Board meeting. This meeting is being recorded by Marshfield Community Media, and judging by the lack of people in here, I imagine there's nobody else here recording. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I just want to wish everybody here and out there a Merry Christmas, and as well as a Happy New Year, and any other holidays that people celebrate. The other one thing I want to mention is Joe Wyman passed away, and I'm grateful for the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years of having the opportunity to know Joe, and had great conversations with him, especially in politics, where him and I were on different sides of the political spectrum, but it was a good conversation. And Joe, to everything I understand, Joe did a lot for the community, and he will certainly be missed. There's no doubt about that. Charlie, do you have anything you want to put in for the town administrator report?
I just have one item. I wanted to just comment on, last week, we had a situation with the national, the Eversource national, the gas plant facility with over-odorification in the system, so I just wanted to read a message relative to that issue. This is from Eversource, but the odor levels at the distribution system are back to normal. So that's out in the street, at our schools and at our homes. All of those odor levels are back to normal. And they've been making good progress at the LNG plant with the flaring activities, the burning off of some of this extra added odorification material that's entered the system. We're still getting back to we still have higher than normal odor readings at the plant itself. As such, they have a plan to continuing flaring activities after school is released on Tuesday of this week at 12:30 p.m. So the flaring will continue. And as Eversource will maintain increased staffing in the area throughout the weekend, and out of an abundance of caution, after meetings with town officials, Eversource will continue to provide staff at the school campuses on Monday and Tuesday of this week. Eversource will perform final testing activities at the plant on Monday, December 29th, when the schools are on vacation and after holidays. Once completed, the Eversource will provide a formal statement closing out this particular event. But I did want to thank the fire and police department and school officials who have worked so closely with us through this process. But anyway, the situation has improved. It's not over yet, and it'll continue for a few more days. But as we've always talked about in these press releases, this hasn't been a release of natural gas itself. It's the additive that they add to the system so that we smell the natural gas. That is what has created the odor problem. But anyway, we've made good progress, and over the next few days, we should address the final problems with the system. So.
Yeah, I'll have to say, what was it? Last Thursday is when we met.
Thursday and Friday.
I thought, especially after the second time the schools had to empty out, I was like, hey, look, I think we have to have a meeting with them, and they were very responsive to it that day. And I would like to say thank you to Eversource in regards to pulling it all together, have a meeting, and then addressing those issues that we all had some serious concerns with. Absolutely. I'm going to be under the impression there's no public comment. So we have an appointment at 6 p.m. Charlie, do we have to wait till 6 p.m. to announce that we're not going to take that up?
I think we should, because we continued it to that date and time certain. So even though we're we're not going to be taking any action. I think we should wait till 6.
Wait till 6 and take it up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so why don't we go to our action items with Harbor Master Mike DeMayo for the first discussion of the approval of the NELM Ridge Road Boat Ramp.
Good evening.
Hello, Mike. Thank you for joining us.
So thank you for having me. The Ridge Road Boat Ramp project was a CPC project that was submitted in 2023. It's completely permitted, all the permits are in hand, the funding source is there, it's within budget, and we're recommending to award contract to NELM for $504,525, and that was under bid alternate B. We had to go back out to bid because in the previous bid, we had like asphalt paving in there, like guardrail stuff. So the DPW was pretty good about, they already have a contract or consortium for asphalt work, so we can get that work done a little cheaper. So that kind of lowered the price a little bit. And the town also, we have to get 2 new gangways and 2 new kayak pass and recreation step-down docks for these new docks as well. So, so we are within budget, and we're looking to do this work in January. That way the ramp can open 100% come April, May. And we're well aware of the timeline of the boating summer. So we're ready to get going on that. Like I said, everything's in hand. The funding source is there, which Meg can attest to, I'm sure. And all the references were checked, and we're ready to go.
I just had a question for you, Mike.
Yep.
'Cause I don't, at least I don't see much of these proposals all the time, but on with the item description, you haven't, it looks like, is it 4 proposals or there's alternates?
Yeah,
So what- can you
Yeah.
explain that for me, the public, and how that whole process works?
Yeah, so what it is, this is the second bid because the first bids were outside of the budget money that we had. So we broke it down a little better to get better prices. Like I said, marine contractors don't do asphalt work, they don't do certain jobs. So we took those things out, and we broke the project down into bid alternates. So bid alternate B, which they all were within our budget, this was the lowest budget of 504. So we're able to get 12 new green heart piles, which are part of the 505 regulations for Concom, so we'll be in compliance with that. The dock will be ADA compliant. There'll be all brand-new docks on the southern side of Ridge Road. The only thing we couldn't do right now is the new docks on the northern side. Those docks are okay, that might be a future project, but I want to get through all the asphalt paving and things like that first to make sure we have enough money to move forward with those docks. So we went ahead and did a bid alternate, so the majority of the boat ramp work can get done, and the ramp opens. So in the future, all we have to do is put new docks on the north side, and we're 100%.
So, what you're saying is the DPW is taking over the asphalts?
They're not taking it over, they have a consortium through the county, so they can get a better bid price than I could get sourcing it out as a sole project.
Okay, so
Yeah, so the town will save a little money there, hopefully.
is that gonna be like a separate expense in regards to this project, or is it?
Yeah, it comes out of this pocket.
It does come out of that
Yeah,
pocket?
yeah. The
Okay.
DPW doesn't pay for it, but we're gonna utilize their contract to save the town some money, probably over 30,000, we're hoping. It was like $75,000, actually it was $73,500 out of the last 3 bids, collectively. That's what it would've cost us, which is a lot of money.
All right, so the 504, 525 is
Yeah.
incorporating the asphalt part of it as well?
No, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't, no.
So it's a separate expense?
Yeah, the current budget's like 629 right now, we have in the accounts. So,
So the total amount for expenditure is 629?
all in, yeah.
All right, so.
But we still have to do the paving, 2 new gangways, and 2 new passive recreation step-down docks as well, which is gonna come out of the 629. So this gives us the most bang for the buck to get the concrete pad in, all the pilings, and all brand-new docks on the northern side, on the southern side, rather.
So with all that said, plus the paving,
Yep.
with the total amount you have, what you're saying is that everything's gonna be covered under that one?
The only
one
thing that may not be covered are new docks on the northern side.
Yep.
But they're not terrible, we can probably get by for a little bit longer. I'd prefer to have it all match and look perfect, but, this gives us the most bang for the buck, and moves the project forward, it makes it more usable, and it'll be ready for the boating season.
Okay.
So, that's all.
You have anything to say?
No, he covered it.
Okay. Trish?
I'm good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I move that the board vote to award contract to NELM Corporation for the Ridge Road Boat Ramp Improvement Project in the amount of $504,525. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, so for the second discussion, discussion vote, contract approval, Green Harbor maintenance dredging adjacent to commercial piers.
Yep.
Mike DeMayo, Harbor Master. So can you
Yep.
highlight on that, Mike?
Yep, so good evening once again. So this contract is, when we dredged the harbor in 2023, 2024, we had a little bit of money left over. The North Pier area of the town pier really fills in quickly, much quicker than other parts of the harbor. So we were fortunate enough to put it out to bid, and we had one bid, which ironically is the person that's already in the harbor, right? So the contract is, he's currently dredging Taylor Marina now, so we're hoping he has enough time, because the dredge window closes December 31st. That's the environmental dredge window. But I had it surveyed last Monday, and the contract was for an estimated 350 cubic yards. The actual volume is 316 cubic yards that are there. So that puts us within budget, and it'll clean up the whole North Pier area, so the guys can come in, offload high tide, low tide versus going around at low tide. Currently, the North Pier dock is high and dry at low tide already. We dredged 2 years ago. It's just the way the material comes around the island behind the North Pier and just settles there. So any relief that we can get would be great. We have all the permits, the contractor's there. The contractor does have a little clause in the contract where if he can't get to the work, he's currently under contract now to do Taylor Marina. Like I said, I was telling Trish before, like they dredged all weekend, they're dredging tonight at 7 o'clock. They're probably 40% complete, and on the window pattern looks pretty good. So I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to get in there and help us out and clean it up a little bit. And we have the money available, which is $133,000 remaining in that account. So,
So that remainder of money will take care of, that remainder of the money will take care of
yes. Yeah.
whatever else you need to clean
Yeah,
up.
so it's 78,500 for the actual dredging. It's probably gonna be a little bit more if that contractor wants to drop the gangway and move the docks, or I bring somebody else in to move the gangway and docks so they can dredge and put the docks back. It may have a few more moves involved, so it could be a little more under a change order. But, because the equipment is 90 feet wide, once it's all next to each other, the barge and the scow. So then they may need a little bit more room to get in there to actually do the work. But it's not gonna be over budget, so we'll be fine within the 133. So,
And you only had, if I'm seeing this correctly, one bid?
yeah, one bid.
Is there not many people that do this?
It's not a lot of work. It's 350 cubic yards. It would cost somebody more money to get here just to do the
Oh,
work.
all right, so that's what it is.
Yeah, so we were kind of lucky.
Is this person local? Gonna be any impression?
No, they're from New Hampshire, but they just dredged Green Harbor, and now they're doing Taylor Marina.
So is
Oh.
the equipment already here? is
The
what you're saying?
equipment's already here, yeah.
All right.
And like Tricia would tell you, that at the prior waterways meeting, we were trying to do some dredging in the Army Corps anchorage, because to clean that up as well. So we're trying to get as much material out of there as we can. We can't dredge the Army Corps anchorage area because we don't have the permit for that, but we do have the town permits to dredge our footprint. So, and we have the data that it comes back at 316 cubic yards that's there. So basically, it's supposed to be 7 feet of mean low water, but it's like 3 and 4 feet. So then you gotta calculate 3 or 4 feet down by X amount of distance, and that gives you the cubic yardage, and it came out to 316 cubic yards. So
And,
it'll be a big help for the fleet.
and you mentioned that at the north part, it fills in more quickly than generally. I mean, can you explain to us?
So they call it the littoral effect, where the material just slumps off and just falls in to the lowest point, and then it builds up, builds up, builds up. And that's that corner of the North Pier, which that happens.
So when you say it falls in, what do you mean? Like,
It just slumps. It just comes around the island and just sits there. And then it falls into the lowest point.
oh, so when you're
kinda
saying
collects.
with
Kinda collects.
with the current? All right, I get what you're
Flow, it's
saying.
the way it flows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Steve, have any questions?
No, thank you.
Trish?
No?
All right. So I move that the board votes to award contract to Atlantic Coast Tug and Marine LLC for Green Harbor Maintenance Dredging Project in the amount of $78,500. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right. You know something, does anybody else, why don't we just roll right into the financial forecast? I'm sure that's what everybody is waiting for at the moment. So,
Skipping over me.
What about the website?
Can I do the website? It's going to be quick.
all right, you want to do the website?
Yeah, is that okay?
That's fine.
I like order.
Shouldn't have told me that, Trish. All right. Discussion on website improvement update. Trish Simpson to provide update along with Todd Godwin from IT. Take it
Okay.
away, Trish.
Thank you. One of the things that I ran on for Select Board was improving the website. And I did start this process the month that I was voted into office, which was May. So we're 8 months later, and all of the issues with the website, or I should say, most of them are hopefully been fixed. I also wanted to address the fact that at a previous meeting, we had talked about a financial review of the town, and I did find that in December 2012, that we did have one, and on it, it said, "Improve maintenance of the town website." So this has been long overdue. Todd is out sick. Detective Todd Goodwin of the Marshfield Police Department is in charge of our IT, and he has been working with me. He did provide some updates, and Robbie is going to just show you the updates. You can, if anyone's familiar with the website, you can already see the difference. So this is what Todd writes: "After a few months of going back and forth with the vendor, we feel this layout format will be a great foundation going forward. The computer version main drop-downs were simplified, less info, drop-downs fixed so don't overlap. Fonts change across the site, made universal. Hyperlinks fixed. Picture shortened in the height and changed to an updated photo." And there'll be more to come. Current information section added to the front page for any important updates that don't warrant an alert, but to keep the public informed. If it does warrant alert, we'll have that red banner across the top, so that'll stand out, and then obviously we don't have anything right now. The news and calendar are moved to be side by side. So everything's right there. Overall, the computer version is better to navigate and allows us to post items that will be easier to find. Another issue was the mobile version, which I don't know about anybody else, but when I pulled it up on my phone, it was a mess. So we now have a mobile version where the news shows in a list format, so all headlines are shown on the screen. We removed background image to tighten up the look, and the calendar is simplified and shows the entire month with 3 events for the current day. Overall, made easier to use on the mobile device. We added page analytics to the site so we can now monitor the hot topics. As of now, it appears trash recycling is the most visited, which we all know if you're on Facebook. Information like this will help us to arrange topics on the homepage. We will review and place a link on the front page. Next steps is to have all departments update, clean up their site. So all the departments have a site, so fire, police, DPW, and they're all very uniformed. But so they'll just make sure that all their information is up to date. We also put boards and commissions on the front. And this was something that, working with Tom Whalen on the Historic Cemetery Commission, he was saying, you go looking for the boards and commissions and you can't find them. So we thought, I bet a lot of people have this. So we're also asking the boards and commissions, they've been asked to give us their mission statement, when they have their meetings and who's on the board, and that is due in January. But we're hoping that they will be updating their page, and if they're not sure, we will have them trained. Lastly, keep in mind, the town has been adding information over the past 10 years plus to this site. There are a lot of documents or info that needs to be organized and labeled correctly. There are still tweaks to be made, but this is a great foundation for the town to work off. So again, this has taken a lot of time, but I think it's a lot better. If anyone in the public goes to use it and they're still not happy with something, please just let us know. We're still looking to make tweaks. But again, I think it's a lot easier to navigate. That's it.
Thank you, Trish. I'm sure everybody appreciates your hard work on this, and we all know that the website was a source of contention for people in regards to navigating, so, do you have anything to add, Steve?
No, it looks nice and crisp, so thank you to you and Todd and Jay and Robin and all of IT. And if anybody wants to help us out and navigate and test it out and send us feedback, that would be appreciated, but it looks really, really sharp.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is it actually up
It's
and running
live.
right now?
It's live. It went live the beginning of last week.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's go into the big one,
Remember, we were talking about that.
the financial report.
Oh, someone emailed.
Who's starting that out?
I asked.
You, Charles, or Meg?
Yeah, I think I'll start with a summary and, oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So anyway, I have a narrative that goes along with the slide, and we'll build this and discuss it section by section. But first of all, I just wanted to thank Meg, your town accountant, because this wouldn't have happened without Meg. Really, she's done a tremendous amount of work on this. And I would just say that what we've tried to do with this fiscal financial forecast is look out over a 5-year period. And that's really what is demonstrated up on the screen. And it just allows you to make decisions in a more comprehensive, complete way. And we'll sort of talk about that as we go down the process. I would, just as a cover for me, not that I really need it, because I'm only temporary, but this is a really big job. We've compressed it into a really narrow window. And I would say that, Meg and I feel comfortable that we've done a good job, that we've captured the more critical information. But this is something that should be refined and expanded on in outlying years. And this is a presentation really that the town has used for a number of years on an isolated, annualized basis. We wanted to stick with that because that's what people are familiar with. But going forward, the Department of Revenue has a forecast document in an Excel version on their website that the town should move towards as they go into outlying years. But anyways, let's start. So what you're really doing when you're doing a financial projection is you're taking a look at the revenue side, what's happening with your revenues. And when you really look at local government revenues, the biggest part of our revenue stream is property tax revenues, the tax bills that you all receive and pay. And if you look at your revenues, there's almost $78 million in property tax revenues. And you'll see that represented on the screen. I can't even see that far. And so what happens every single year under Proposition 2.5 is you take the prior year's levy limit and you can increase it by 2.5%. So that's new money for future expenditures. And so what's 2.5% of increase? It's a little over $2 million. So those are new revenues to fund operational costs going forward. So what are your other revenues? Well, they're new growth revenues. So when there's a new house, a new garage, a new deck, a new apartment complex, that's new growth in the community, and that's important to your revenue stream. And so in the case of Marshfield, you've had significant new growth over the current fiscal year and projected into next year because of, I guess, the new apartment complex that's being constructed. And I did meet with Anne Marie, our assessor, and go over this. So we're saying, hey, next year, new growth revenues is in the range of $900,000. And so that's higher than it typically is. If you really looked at your average new growth revenue, it's in the range of $500,000 or $600,000 off the top of my head. So that new construction is helping. So, where else is there revenue for property tax levy? And that's excluded debt. The town by ballot has provided, extra money. It's called a debt exclusion. So when you built your police station, your new DPW building, your senior center, the new high school, Furnace Brook School, the seawall project, everybody said, yeah, we'll allow you to do those projects, and you can increase our tax levy, our property tax levies for the life of that loan or mortgage or debt that you have in the project. So anyway, when you take all of those items, Marshfield can raise about $89,500,000 in property tax levies. And that's how these screens are built, so that we can track this. So that's your biggest revenue stream. So where else does Marshfield get money from to fund the budget? And state aid is really the next biggest category. So, and in fact, Marshfield in the current fiscal year received $19,835,000 in state aid. Most of it's Chapter 70, which is school aid, and I've listed that on a memo that I have available and that the select board has seen. But anyway, right now, for planning purposes, Meg and I have level funded state aid for FY '27 at that number. And we'll monitor activities with the State House, usually at the end of January, at the beginning of February. The state will issue House 1, which is the state aid budget. So as soon as we know what's in the state budget, we'll update this number to reflect that. I think if you look at state aid over time, usually you see a 1.5% to a 2% increase in state aid. So my instinct is that we'll see a little bit more money there, not a lot, but a little bit. But the minute we get the state aid number, we'll update the forecast. And by the way, this forecast document we'll update probably every single week. As we get more information, we'll update the spreadsheet, we'll share it with the select board, and we'll share it with the advisory board. So we're all on the same page as we navigate what I'm about to describe as a difficult path. So what's the next category of revenues that's really important? It's local receipts. And there's a whole range of areas that cover local receipts: motor vehicle excise tax, all your permit fees for building and when you're doing construction, marijuana revenues. There's ambulance receipts. There's probably 20 categories of revenues that we collect in local receipts. Now, we're using, the town currently is using an estimated receipt of $12 million, I'm rounding, $400,000 for local receipts. And frankly, what we should be doing, what you should be doing going forward is you want to take a look at local receipts over really a 10-year period. And you want to analyze your local receipts every single year. Now, what Meg and I have found as we've gone down this road is the local receipts estimate that was used for the current fiscal year were overly optimistic. We really think they're way too high compared to what you're going to collect. So we've reduced that number by 5%. We're concerned with collections in the current fiscal year. We'll monitor those on a monthly basis and update those. So really, in a way, what Meg and I have proposed is you're going to use 95% of your kind of current year actuals for local receipts. And that's sort of, even I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I feel that's a little high. I always used to use 85 to 90% for so I would look at my actuals, I would use 85 or 90% of those to build the budget. And you say, oh, well, why do you do that? Why don't you use every penny you can? Well, because sometimes you don't collect everything you have, and we're worried about that this current fiscal year. And so if you do that, then you've got to make some budget cuts in the middle of a fiscal year. And the other benefit of being more conservative on using your local receipts is it ends up in free cash. So, that in the end, it protects you against under collections or a cutback. It might be motor vehicle excise. People aren't buying new cars like they used to. So, what I would say to the town is I would suggest that you trend more back to 85 or 90% versus the 95% that we're using right now. And even, you can see why we only want to use a 5% cut, because that results in a $648,000 reduction in revenues for the budget document. And we're struggling already, but anyway, we'll keep an eye on local receipts, and we'll keep everybody updated. Really, every single select board meeting, we'll have an update for you. Now, another category is indirect costs, and you have, I think, 3 enterprise funds, right? Water, wastewater, solid waste. And what happens, those really are in pretty good shape in terms of, I think those accounts are in good shape in terms of the way they do business. And their retained earnings are strong, and they've done a good job managing their budgets and programs. But what happens on the enterprise funds is we provide services to them. We do their payroll, we do their accounting, we provide their health care, we provide their insurance, we cover their pension costs. All of those overhead indirect costs are embedded in the town budget. So we need to charge the enterprise fund for those cost areas. Now, I would say, and I'm just walking in from outside, and, in my vast 9 weeks of service here in Marshfield, I did take a look, and Meg and I have spent a fair amount of time working on this. I did take a look at the old formula that used for indirect costs. It was really complicated. And I think it led itself to, some questions about the accuracy of that and things of that nature. And I know it's been a point of conflict in town over the past few years, but what Meg and I did is we took the Department of Revenue recommended formula to determine indirect costs. It's very transparent, it's very simple, and so we're using that number in our forecast. And I think that was like, what did I say, $1 million?
1.7 million?
Yeah, 1.9 million?
Or 1.7.
Yeah, 1.7. That's a slight decrease. It's almost a $50,000 increase over the current fiscal year, but we think it's a fair representation of the indirect costs. Now, we have had a preliminary meeting with some of the staff from the Department of Public Works and one of the commissioners to review the plan for indirect costs. So, they haven't taken any action yet. So that's still sort of in negotiation and conversation. But we have offered to meet with the commissioners and the staff again to go over that. But right now, we've reduced the revenues we think we're going to see through indirect costs. Okay, we keep going, looking at revenues. Now we jump down to other financing sources. Now, once again, Meg and I have reduced revenues in this area by the sum of $408,000. So it's really a significant decrease in monies through other financing sources. And I do have a chart that is included in the memo that I provided to the select board that talked about this area. But the biggest reduction, and the reason for the more significant reason that we're recommending using less money from other financing sources is solar-related revenues. The town was collecting and accumulating a fair amount of money in a special revenue account for solar projects that you have out there, but you've heavily relied on those revenues in FY '25 and FY '26. You know, they really are sort of one-time revenues that you exhausted. So we really had to back off that number, and that's the significant reason for the reduction in revenue. So it's another, you know, problem that we're trying to address in this revenue forecast plan. So in the end, you know, as I talked about in summary, you know, even though your property tax revenues have increased by almost $3 million, a number of your other financing areas have decreased by $1,100,000. Those are all of those things that I talked about when I summarized this. So your new net revenues are $1,869,000. So it's challenging, all right? Our revenues are collapsing. You really were using too many one-time revenues to subsidize your budget over the last few years. So we're trying to bring that back to something that's sustainable and going forward. And by the way, it's not just Meg and I think this is a good idea. When we submit our forms to set the tax rate, the Department of Revenue looks at all of these revenues, looks at your projection to make sure that before they approve your tax rate, that the spending plan that you're presenting to them is viable, it's sustainable, and we do not feel that what you are doing in the current fiscal year is sustainable next year. So we've made a major sort of course correction that's, you know, frankly, having some devastating impacts, and I'm going to talk about expenditures next. So now I'm going to jump down into the expenditures side, and Meg is highlighting these areas as we go down, but I really want to talk about the areas that are more significant. And overlay reserve, so, you know, it's, you know, like, what's overlay reserve? Who could possibly understand what that is? Well, Anne Marie from the assessing department loves overlay reserve because that's what she deals with every day. And so when we issue tax bills, people will look at their tax bills and they may have some grievances and file an abatement application. Or we have a very powerful exemption program for families to help out families in certain situations in town. So they'll file for an exemption or they'll file for an abatement. Now, we were using, I think, $500,000, Meg? Or, yeah, so the town had been appropriating the sum of about $500,000 for overlay reserve for a number of years. It was inadequate. You were spending really in the range of $900,000 a year. So, hey, what does that mean? So we spent more. Well, we have to raise it on the recap sheet when we set the tax rate. So overlay reserve, not on any fault by the assessor's department, but overlay reserve didn't reflect the abatements and the exemptions that you were issuing. So the Department of Revenue did see this and mentioned this when we set the tax rate just very recently. And so we have to increase overlay reserve. We're using the sum of $900,000. And I think the same thing on overlay reserve is every year we should sit down with the assessors and go over the past year and the years before that to say, what is the right number? And it really didn't seem to be happening in a manner that was appropriate. Okay? Now we get down into, I talked about this on the revenue side, debt exclusions. You know, the town has supported a vast number of important community projects. I mentioned those, police station, high school, et cetera, many projects. So this is the expense side of that. We can raise money to pay the principal and interest on those bonds for the life of the bond. So they're temporary debt that we can raise on the levy for the life of the loans. Once they're paid off, that spending authority goes away. Anyway, this expense mirrors the revenue that I'd mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. Cherry sheet revenues, costs, I'm sorry. So I mentioned on the cherry sheet, we get quite a bit of money from the state on a number of different categories, mostly Chapter 70. But there are also assessments on there. You know, you belong to Plymouth County, you're in the Mosquito Control District, you're in the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. There's about 10 different charter schools sending tuition. Anyway, so we have charges on the cherry sheet as well, and we've level funded those at the moment. And we're going to start to get assessments from these organizations over the next month or so. So once we get the real numbers, we'll infill those. They're going to increase, and I would guess in the range of 2.5%. Anyway, once again, every time you get an update from us, we'll reflect the latest current information from all these agencies that we work with. Now, the next section that we have highlighted here is the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School, and this is a huge financial issue for the community to deal with. This is one of the most impactful areas affecting our fiscal condition for FY '27. And, you know, you've voted to join the vocational tech, which is great, but we seem to be having more and more children using the vocational tech services, which is great. That's why you joined it. But if you think about it, in FY '27, our costs are increasing by $643,000 in this budget. And that's just more kids. And I think it went from 34 to 69 kids that are choosing the Voc Tech for their educational gains. So when you voted to join the Voc Tech, you didn't get any more spending capacity. You didn't get an override for that cost. So you have to pay for that within your existing levy limit and revenue structure. And that's really a big problem. Now, when you start to go on, not on this slide, but another slide that we have, this is I want to highlight this because as you go out into outlying years, like for example in FY '28, we're going to start to load in not only more kids, you know, going into the system, but now we're going to have debt payments for the new high school. So we're projecting in FY '28, your interest payment, your first interest payment will be about $437,000. And then once in FY '29, once we load in the full interest and interest payments on the estimate for that construction, that cost to Marshfield will be in the range of $1.5 million. And you don't have any increased revenue to support that. I know you tried to get an override for the debt. It was close, but it failed. So as we go down talking about these issues, I would definitely encourage the town to go back to the voters to seek some financial assistance via a debt exclusion for the high school costs, because it's going to have a devastating impact in the next 3 or 4 years. We can talk about that in more detail at some other time. Now, as Meg keeps scrolling down here, there's a number of other areas that have new costs that we're going to have to build into the budget. And a few years ago, you made a decision to migrate to a new financial reporting software, which I think was a good decision. It's always challenging as you're transitioning to the new programs, but it definitely was the right thing to do. But it came with a cost in the range of $300,000. So it's a new cost. We have to build it into the budget. This year and last year, I believe, you had an article that appropriated some money, a one-time article. Now we have to build that into the budget. So another, a financial concern as we develop the budget for FY '27. Facilities budget, you have a practice of appropriating money for your facilities. This is for the town and the school's facility department. You've allocated in the range of about $500,000 for the facilities budget and the budget in the operational budget. And then you've always gone back to a special town meeting and gotten a special appropriation in the approximate range of $500,000 every single year. Those are operational costs as far as I'm concerned. They should be built into the budget so that you have a sustainable plan to run your operations. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but when I look at it as someone totally divorced from the process and looking at sort of sound financial practices, it's a concern for me. Anyway, now, non-excluded debt. Now, if you remember my first meeting, I think, we had a conversation about the Martin School roof project, and there was a conversation, hey, should we just use free cash? Should we just pay for that with the current revenues that we had? And, you know, that was my first or second meeting, but I sort of immediately you need a debt exclusion. You need money to pay for. If you want to do this project, you need to have the financial underpinnings to pay for it. But in the past, you have issued a lot of debt without a debt exclusion. And that's fine. I think there's, and by the way, right now, that's in the range of $3.5 million. So you have debt payments for a lot of wonderful pieces of equipment and projects that you've done, and you said, oh, we'll just pay for it with our existing revenue stream, $3.5 million. And I would say to you, I prefer to have a capital plan that's self-funding. We're not issuing debt for trucks and improvements. So, you know, because once you start borrowing for it, you have to pay interest on that, right? So it's an area that I think we need to have a long conversation from a policy perspective of how we issue debt and how, you know, and what, for what purposes. But just looking at it as an outsider, just stepping in here, that's a big red warning light from me. Now, the other categories that we have built in here are all in a sort of miscellaneous range. I'm not going to go through the details, but it's general insurance, Medicare, pension, employee health, life insurance, and unemployment, particularly health care and pension costs. Meg, are we using 8%
For pension,
in health care?
healthcare, we are using 10%.
Yeah, okay, 10% for healthcare. So I don't know what healthcare costs are going to be projected through the Mayflower purchasing group that we're a member of, but we'll know sometime in the next couple of months. But all indications are from every purchasing group that is looking at this is healthcare costs are out of control, right? So right now, Meg and I are using 10%, and I think 8% for pension.
Actually, no, we're using 10% for both.
Both, okay, fine. Both really real areas of concern. So anyway, we'll be playing with all of these categories as Meg and I work to talk about, to start the budget process. Now, in summary, you know, we've identified budgetary increases in the range of almost $4 million. All of these things that I've talked about, you know, we have increases. If you addressed every problem in the manner that Charlie would want you to, you know, and you'll probably do some combination thereof. But if I had a wand, I would want a budget for all these increases. That's almost $4 million. And as I mentioned on the revenue side, we have new revenues available of $1,870,000. So, you know, so that's a gap between revenues and expenses of $2,461,000. So that's pretty ugly. Now, Meg and I sort of started looking at budgets, and we, in the spreadsheet that we have on the screen right here, we've increased expenses by 1.5%. We just did it as a placeholder. What if we increased our different departmental expense categories by 1.5%? Then this is the situation now where we have an overall budget deficit of $4,521,000. So that's the number with all of those items that I've talked about. We're looking at a $4.5 million deficit. Now, all of our collective bargaining agreements are up for negotiations, or almost all, but 95% are up for negotiations. So then you say, hey, what's collective bargaining negotiations going to cost? And the answer is we have no idea, because we're just starting our collective bargaining negotiations. But we did a really sort of a back of a napkin evaluation of our wage line items, and a 1% raise is worth about $750,000, just for, target purposes, as we kind of talk about the situation that we're dealing with. Now, someone says, that's sort of a lot of numbers and a lot of information, and why are we in this situation, right? And so, as I think I've talked about through this whole presentation, you've used a lot of one-time revenues to plug the revenue gap the last couple of years, and we've exhausted all of those revenues. So that's part of the problem. Additionally, you've been paying for a number of operational costs out of free cash. And in certain situations, that's fine, but you want to keep it to a minimum. And so, for example, for the last couple of years, we've been paying for the school resource officers out of free cash. That's $284,000. Not questioning the program, I know it has great value, but you're using a one-time revenue when you know those school resource officers are going to be there next year. We just settled a fire department 3-year collective bargaining agreement, $1,100,000. We used free cash. You had no choice, because that was the only option you had before you. And I would say on the collective bargaining side, when I don't have a contract settlement, I try to reserve revenues and excess levy capacity so that I know I can finance it for more than 1 year. So the fire department. And then I know we provided some supplemental funding to the school department last year, right? In the range of about $640,000. I don't think there was any choice. I understand why you did it. I'm not critical of that. But it was a one-time revenue that really is probably a cost that's going to keep stay in place. So, in summary, to me, it's really not best management practices in local government in Massachusetts to operate using a lot of these one-time revenues for costs that are coming around to next year. You've exhausted your reserves. You've overly relied on free cash. You have a major issue with the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School, and it's really, it's sort of the, Stephen and I have been talking about an article that was in the Mass Municipal Association recently, talked about a perfect storm, and there is a perfect storm going on in the Commonwealth. Many, many, many communities are dealing with these fiscal pressures. Yours are exaggerated by some of the things that I talked about here. So, I'm sorry, I talked way too much. There are some other things we want to talk about, but maybe I'll stop for the moment to see if there's any questions. And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, and I don't know, Meg, did I miss anything that you wanted to include?
No, I don't think so.
But this is all Meg's work, by the way,
Thank you.
just so you know.
So, I just want to touch upon some of the things you brought up. So state aid. Now, I know we can't do anything with the schools, but, I mean, state aid, you don't know what you're getting. Could be less, could be more. So, and I know we've had this conversation before, I think I've been pretty public about it. Should we be incorporating state aid into our budget, or should that be something that we should be leaving as a separate thing, a spending item?
Yeah, well, it's challenging. You get almost $17 million, 16+ million dollars in state aid. So, and right now, you're using all of that money to fund the operational budget. So if you try to peel it back, maybe reserve some of it for projects, or reserve some of it for special ed costs, I don't know, for a stabilization fund, then you're going to peel it away from the operational budget. So it's going to make the deficit even worse. So if you're going to do things of that nature, you're going to have to develop a multi-year plan to get there, because you're not going to get there overnight.
Yeah, I mean, the town, I think itself gets roughly $2 million, you know, so the whole thing is that, I just find it, in my opinion, as I grow into this job, that we're using money that there's no guarantees to, and now we see that we're running into a situation, my look at it is that, like I said, the school does its thing, but my look at it is the schools that roughly the $15 million they get, but they already use it to their operational budget, they should be putting, I would say, in my opinion, $2-3 million aside for their needs, instead of incorporating into their operational budget, in my opinion.
Yeah,
As well as what we get from the state.
Yeah, you are right. I mean, the schools get $16,400,000 in educational aid. The town unrestricted general government aid is $2,700,000, I'm rounding, but $2,700,000. And then there's some other monies too.
And I know when the state puts the cherry sheets out, I think there's stipulations kind of attached to it in regards to how you can spend the money, but the whole thing is that, I mean, if the schools were able to put some of that money to aside, like say for the roofs in some of these buildings, I mean, I think that would cover under the students that they would have to kind of relay that money to in a way. I mean, it's, I look at it as just with the aid that we get on the cherry sheets, I think between the town and the schools, I think we have to look at how we or allocate that money and how much we should be spending it all at one time. The 5% reductions, you guys based it on 5%, so, and I know, Charlie, you mentioned that it should be down maybe 10, 15. Why are you doing 5%, not basing it on 10%?
Well, I'm only, if you looked at a forecast that Meg and I first put together, it was 10%. But then as we kept building the document and looking at everything, and we were trending towards $4.5 million, we kind of panicked, right? And I just said, you know what, even though if I were your permanent town administrator, which I can't be and I won't be, I would work my way towards that over 2 or 3 or 4 years. And that's the only way you're going to be able to do it in light of the numbers that we've just presented.
I think the one thing that probably needs to be accounted for that I don't think we've had discussions on really, and how much money is out there that where people in arrears on property taxes and fees.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. You did ask me to look into that, and I haven't had a chance to do that yet. Yeah, so that's something we'll try to catch up on.
Yes, I think that's.
You don't have anything on that, right, Meg?
I don't have it right off the.
Yeah.
I think that's a big component.
And I think, Mr. Chair.
I mean, the good thing about property taxes, we do lien them
Yep.
every year religiously.
Yes.
And then when it becomes so outside of the norm, we foreclose those tax liens and, we make a tax taking. So sometimes we're delayed, but we do usually collect those real estate taxes.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point.
I mean, when you say you collect them, but
They're paid,
Collecting them for years from now, right? Is that what I'm looking at?
they usually don't get too far out, because if you have a mortgage on your property, and the bank finds out, or your lender finds out that you're behind on your taxes, many times the lender will pay those taxes and adjust your payment. So, is that your experience too? Okay. So, although we are delayed on real estate taxes, we do recover that, and we recover it with interest and penalties.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, the interest that we charge on those liabilities is set by the state, but it's onerous. I think it's 14%.
14%.
14%?
Yeah.
State sets at a.
Yeah,
what, a
when
late payment
someone
fee, is that
becomes-
what it is?
Yeah, well, when these go into tax title, the state interest penalty rate is 14%.
Used to be 16.
I mean, especially with today's like this, like I understand people might fall behind a little bit, but at 14%, that's enough to crush them. I would-
And the only thing that's kind of impacted communities like Marshfield is that there was a change in law when cities and towns used to foreclose on their tax liens. We got to keep the equity. But there's been a change in the law that now requires us to give back to the property owner the excess equity after we repay ourselves the debt.
Yeah, there was a court case on that, wasn't it, in regards?
Yes, there was a case from the land court that was codified into law now that requires us to give the excess equity back. It complicates the foreclosure process, but it doesn't eliminate it. But obviously, we prefer not to foreclose on anybody, but occasionally that does happen.
No, I mean, I'm with you that we would prefer not to foreclose. And
On-
we all know that people run into to circumstances that are beyond their control. But the whole thing is that, I mean, what was does anybody know what the basis is on charging 14% as a penalty?
It's the statutory rate.
It's.
Yeah, but does anybody know how they came up with that number?
No, I don't. I will just say, I don't want to say it's because it's always been that, but for me, my whole time working in local government, it's always been that. So I don't know what the historic reasons for that. It does seem incredibly high, but that's what it is at the moment.
Maybe that's,
Meg did bring up a screen that might answer part of your question.
feel free to speak.
So for the outstanding taxes, this is as of the end of fiscal '25, so it's not current. The personal property taxes was $47,000, that's what was outstanding. Real estate taxes, a little over $1 million. Tax liens, $1.5 million.
So what, all right, so total, when you throw those numbers out, what's the total number that the town is, I guess, short you can look at? That one-
In total receivables, it was, it's about 7.6 million. But we are talking like for collection rates, it is at approximately like 98% rate, and it stays consistent from year to year. So like collect 98% this year, there's some accounts that are delayed, you're going to collect it next year, and it'll be about the same number.
So, did you say 7.6 million? We are.
Yeah, but that's
short?
also including ambulance outstanding accounts and,
Oh, yeah, all right, I go.
but if we're just talking personal real estate, tax liens, 2.6 million.
2.6?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So you're pretty compliant, you know.
I mean, if you're
people are compliant.
considering like 80 million plus levy.
That 2.6 million would make a big difference right now if we had it. That would be the impression, right?
But you're never going to be at that point. You're always going to have some level of outstanding receivables.
Is, when you say always, it mean people are never going to be able to pay, or, I mean, how's that working?
I think it's just individual circumstances. People lose their job or have a health care issue. There's
Yeah.
so many reasons that people fall behind. And a lot of people, well, when I worked in Brewster, people would come in and sit down with the treasurer collector and work out a payment plan. So the town does try to work with people because we want compliance. We don't want to charge and create more distress for people. So we work really, and I think Marshfield, I'm sure, does the same thing.
Yes.
All right, could I ask you two to find out more about that 14% charge, and then maybe that's something as a board should take up and maybe send a letter to our legislatures in regards to that? It's,
Bob has a comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
I just got clarification. So the 14% is until we do the tax taking, and after the tax taking, it's 16%.
Well, there's a 16, yeah.
So
When you
that's,
say tax take, like, when you, like,
so if you don't pay your taxes, okay, you get a warning letter from the treasurer collector's office, your taxes are delinquent. And if we have to turn it over, we place a lien on the property. And after we've placed the lien on the property, we take the property for non-payment of taxes. And after a period of time goes by and the taxes are not satisfied, we foreclose that tax lien.
okay, so the 14% is added on afterwards. It's not when someone's fallen.
14 when you fall behind, 16% after the tax taking.
So 14% when you fall behind. So as soon as you fall behind, you're getting charged 14% interest. Is that the way?
That's right.
That seems like a lot right there. And that'll keep somebody behind the whole time, in my opinion.
It'll double that in a very short period of time. I can't tell you the exact calculation, but it's a stiff penalty.
Yeah, it's, I think that's something that we should visit, in my opinion, going forward. On the enterprise accounts, do we know what the status of the audit is at right now?
On the indirects?
On the indirects?
I think so. Well,
they
the
haven't-
Board of Public Works supposed to take up an audit, so. do
Yeah,
we know what-
we know they've been talking about it, but they have not hired a
They haven't gone
firm.
forward, really?
They haven't had
nope.
anyone who would.
Oh, Bob,
I have a little information. It's probably not the most accurate. I know they did go out for an RFP. They didn't get any responsive proposers. And I know they're in the process of revising it, and they're going to put it out again.
All right, because I mean, that audit's gonna be big, because if there's something that comes about that the town owes those accounts money back, that could be another factor into budgeting, right?
well, I suppose it's certainly a possibility, yeah.
And then you touched upon that you guys revised the
Calculation.
what is it? Yeah, the calculations for the enterprise accounts.
Yes.
So, are we gonna be anywhere near and doing something with the Board of Public Works and signing off something with that?
We have sent them all of our calculations. Actually, we sent it today, and we've offered to meet with them. So we'd like to get together and talk about it, certainly.
And then the solar revenues, you were talking about how those are being, if I'm understanding what you were saying, Charlie, is that the one-time revenues, but they were being used to pay for expenses that they probably shouldn't have been?
They were used as a revenue source. I don't think they're.
But
Oh, go ahead.
It is actually, it is actually recurring. It's just that the levels to which we were going to town meeting and saying we're offsetting the budget with this amount, those amounts were too high. So it is recurring. We do continue to
Okay,
collect. So-
but the number was set too high that it was gonna cover those costs, so that's another thing that put us in a bind right now that we're in, what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
You know, and then you brought the tax rate modification, so I was just wondering, it's like, I think what did we set it at, Anne Marie? Was it $9.90 coming up?
Tax rate, it's $9.61 this year.
61? So I mean, if we would, if we increased that, would that make a difference in regards to the money generated, or?
We can't increase that. We can only raise whatever the levy is. We can't tax anything more than the levy, and we can't
So you
just-
couldn't set a higher tax rate, say like by $1 or like that?
You know, when Meg and I work on the recap, it's set and that's what it is, and I can't raise more than what's on that.
Yeah, because
Recap sheet.
your only mechanism to collect more is some sort of an override, debt
Override.
exclusion, capital exclusion, those are.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that.
Only way.
I was just thinking that if you could raise, say, the tax rate from 961 to maybe 1061, just to give an example, for a temporary period, it'll offset some things, you know, but I don't wanna get, at least me, I don't wanna get into a debt exclusion or an override to offset any of these issues that have been caused by in the past, and now we're looking at.
To answer your question, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead,
If
Steve.
you wanted to go from $9.61 per $1,000 to $10.61, you could do that as a temporary override. That's what that would be. Most commonly, overrides are operational in nature, and they're usually permanent, and they raise the floor, but you can also do temporary overrides. So if you wanted to go from $9.61 to $10.61, that would be an override, and you could make it temporary as part of a menu of options if you wanted to explore that.
Well, I think if that's something we should entertain for the time being, offset some things, maybe something to look at, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, that's good information, Steve, I appreciate that, thank you.
I think
Go
just,
ahead,
I think
go
just one thing I would add there, though, is just keeping in mind that if you do it temporarily, are you then building budgets that are unsustainable? You know, that would, you know, it helps.
My look is, I wasn't building, I was just, I think we're looking at debt right here, I mean, I think we need to offset some debt, is what I'm looking at.
That would help.
I mean, take South Shore Boat Tech, I mean, we could do it, but the whole thing is that we gotta fix our budget in the overall, but something temporary, just to offset some of these things. That's the way I was looking at it, you
You know
know,
what?
I'm not looking, that's why I said temporary. To fix some things for the time being, but, you know, we'll set an end date for it, and then, you know, something, but we need to iron out the whole operation of the town, in my opinion.
Of course. Yeah, just building off that thought, I just want to throw it out there, and is, you know, an area that might have an advantage is the non-excluded debt that we currently have. That's temporary. Once it's paid off, it goes away. So that might be a way to sort of have a slightly different approach that mirrors what you're talking about. These are the strategies we're going to have to talk about over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, throw everything up there.
Yeah.
You know, and see what we,
But that has an advantage, I think.
yeah, like, the next one is South Shore Boat Tech. So the whole thing is that, we need to bring that up soon for the select board to take up.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that, where it failed, Bob, does South Shore Boat Tech need to resubmit the paperwork for that, where it failed at town meeting? To negotiate the,
Ballot question coming up.
what's that?
We have a ballot question.
No, that's a different one. We're talking about the, was it the operational?
We will.
Don't we have 1.3?
Once we know what the tuition's gonna be, we'll have to have it included in our budget.
Yeah.
Eric's asking about the capital project in particular for the new school building.
And we don't know what the figure's gonna be yet.
We have an estimate.
Yeah, well, they never gave us the number anyway, so I think it was just a blank slate to approve it, so.
It was, because it wouldn't be tied to a dollar amount, because it couldn't be.
And so I think there's a couple of questions going on with the South Shore Tech. One,
We got an operational budget.
you got an operational budget that we are going to struggle to fund, and we have a looming fiscal cliff on the debt side. So definitely the debt, I would encourage going back to voters to see if we can get a debt exclusion.
Do you want me to show?
Yeah, you got that, yeah.
Yeah,
Meg has some,
God, I'm sorry, like, I have to keep zooming in.
Can I ask about the pension? Is this the pension max, so it'll be funded by a certain year, or?
This rate currently is, they're still like accelerating the payment so that we can get fully funded
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
yeah, and just on that, I know, yes, so there's two parts. There's the ongoing costs, and then there's the unfunded liability that towns have been working on since 1988. We've been making great progress at funding the unfunded liability, and we're sort of in the home stretch. I only know Barnstable because that's where I live and work, and, we still have like 10 years left on that funding schedule. I need to check where Marshfield is. And there is an effort by a few towns to take a look at delaying,
Yeah.
extending that deadline out a little further. I'll maybe have some information for the board at your January meeting. Sorry, I know Meg had something.
And no, I mean, if we're just talking about the South Shore Regional VOTAC, so this is like the 5-year forecast looking forward. And so like each year so far, like we've had this is the first year where you had, full class of freshmen, and then you have freshman and sophomore year, then you'll have freshman, sophomore, junior year, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So like each year you're adding more students until you get to a full slate of students. And so what you're seeing like from 27 to 28 is you're seeing an increase. Let me see if I think I have my notes in there. And so that's interest only on the new high school. And then this is the first full year of debt service. But I think it's 29 that is your full 4 years of student plus your first year of high school debt service, total principal interest. So you could, yeah, you could see the amount that it increases each.
It's devastating, yeah.
It's, yeah, it's something that you get a factor into the budget, that's for sure.
So we're losing students, well, they'll be going to the VOTAC or Norfolk Aggie, right? But our school budget continues to increase. Where do we see some of that come back?
Yeah, I have no idea because I haven't had any involvement in the school budget and had a chance to talk to them about that. And they're working on their budget, so I think it's a good question to ask.
Well, I'm, absolutely, I mean, it's something we've been discussing in regards to school budget, is that they're losing students, and their budget keeps increasing, and the whole thing is that, you know, they have to do something, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I think, what was it, the South Shore News, I guess, they wrote an article I read, I think it was from a December 2nd meeting. I guess Sean, what people would tell me, I haven't seen the meeting, but Sean was on a rant about me, I guess, about talking about the schools, but the whole thing is that, if you read the article, he clearly shows that they've been supposedly cutting over the years, so obviously they know that all these years they've been heavy with whatever they have. And my look at it, reading that article, is that he's just telling everybody, yeah, we've been heavy with whatever budgetary items, and over the years we've been cutting back on it, so the whole thing is that it's got to continue, but, I mean, you keep asking for more money, it's ridiculous in my opinion. That
What's concerning too is we have aging buildings, and we're gonna keep slapping roofs and new doors and all these things.
Well, right,
Throwing
Trish.
money at aging buildings.
Well, that's the whole thing, like I was bringing up in regards to the cherry sheets, or with the state's given the town between like the couple $1 million for the town and on the cherry sheets, and then $15-16 million for the schools. The whole thing is that, I look at is that the schools have been, everything I've asked about is the schools have been spending that entire amount on their operating budget. And my look at is that they should be saving, let's just put a number of $3 million on the side for all these other things that they need, in my opinion. And that includes the roofs. I mean, if they had $3
Does that
million.
come out of the school budget? Did the roofs in the buildings themselves, or is that town?
So if we're talking debt service, that's a shared cost, so that's neither town nor school.
Oh, okay.
And I think the bigger conversation about the school budgets is, while we've had a couple of preliminary meetings with the school officials, they've been productive, they're in the same kind of process as we are.
Right,
They're
right.
developing their budgets, identifying their issues, and just like we have to explain all the things that we'll be presenting, they will and are capable of it. I think the one issue that I've talked to the superintendent about is, I think there's some disagreement about what are shared costs. And so we're going to have my idea always is, if there's questions, then we should meet and talk about it.
Absolutely.
So that's what the superintendent and I have talked about is, but we had to get this thing done yet first. And that's another element that we need to do, sit down with the school department, take a look at these shared costs, and either, I think we'll reach an agreement on 95% of these items. There might be some disagreement in whatever, if there is, and whatever that is, then we'll talk about that with the select board, and they'll talk about it with the school committee. So we're just sort of scratching the surface on that whole
I don't know, I just look at it, they
issue.
think they needed a whole new financial team and an outlook on things, in my opinion. Snow and ice removal, it was only budgeted for, let's see, 400,000?
So there's a Mass General Law related to snow and ice that if you increase the appropriation, then from that year onwards, you always have to keep it at that higher level. Like, you can never reduce snow and ice, because if you do, you can't deficit spend in that account.
Yeah, all right, because I always thought, I could have sworn it was at 600,000, but,
You're right. We spent
Spent,
600,000.
yeah,
is it
spent.
spent 600?
Yeah,
And
so,
25.
so that would have been a deficit of $222,000.
All right, so we're just saying, keep it at 400,000, and then
Yeah,
the deficit spend, and then what, the free cash, what do we get for free cash covers that?
oh, we can raise it on the levy, the property tax levy. I would say on snow and ice, what I always used to do as a practice is, I would look at 5 years of expenditures, right? And how did it trend? Now you have a big snowstorm, you try to factor those out. But I would adjust it periodically. Meg's right, you want to be careful when you do it, because once you go up to $500,000, you can never go backwards, or you lose your ability to spend in a deficit under the state law. So anyway, I would say,
Another archaic law. it seems
I was just gonna try to do that before you did that to me, you know? I'm a career government guy, I think it's perfectly reasonable. But anyway, I do encourage us, us, I won't be here, but to take a look at the history. And that's what I really say on all of these revenues and expenditures is, you want to look backwards. I used to look back 10 years. You want to look backwards 5 years, and you want to look forward 5 years. And then you're going to make better public policy decisions. And that you're not just living for today, you like the Cape Cod, sorry. The South Shore Vocational Tech. That's a problem. If you had some numbers, you would have been like, okay, before we make that decision, we might have conditioned the vote on an override, whatever.
Can I just make one point too? So on the revenue forecast, you'll see that there are lines at the bottom in terms of like stabilization, storm stabilization. We did not put numbers in there because we didn't want to put into the revenue forecast, but they're there as a reminder that we also have to remember these reserves.
Absolutely.
On the general insurance, I imagine that's not covering health insurance, is it?
That's property.
Yeah,
liability.
casualty, property liability.
There's,
We don't have a number yet, but what did we put in there for that? I forget, 6? Anyway,
6%.
6%, okay.
on the, yeah, all right, here we go, employee health insurance. So it's costing the town roughly $9.1 million this upcoming fiscal year? Is that what I'm seeing?
We're
right?
projecting for 27.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, what was it, 7.4 in 2024? And it's gone up, and we're projecting 9.1 in the 27 budget?
It's really,
So it's like almost a $3 million increase?
it's really true.
This isn't,
Oh, actually,
and this isn't set, in
yeah.
this isn't set in stone yet. This is just a working document. There are concerns of where the health insurance market is going, and it's better to have a conservative view at this particular point, rather than be overly optimistic and we think everything's fine, and then you have to change that number.
Right. No, let me correct myself. It's almost a $2 million increase. So, I mean, I guess, just looking at that, I mean, I guess you have to sit down with the employees and all that and figure out, hey, is there another route we can go here, right?
Yeah.
That may be more cost beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, the answer is, I don't know. I mean, right now, you pay 50%, of the premiums, low compared to maybe a number of communities. But
Yeah, I know that's been a source of contention.
yeah, that, well, I won't get into that, but, there's a number of marketplaces to get healthcare insurance for government employees. They're all stressed. Doesn't mean we can't look at alternatives and ideas, but every one of those marketplaces. As a matter of fact, I should say, just for fun, Meg and I did a peer review of our plan with the town manager and the assistant and Brewster, because I know them. So, we took a look at their forecast and we talked about our forecast. And, all of the things we're doing, they're doing. So it's, everybody's, dealing with similar issues. But
On the,
It's just bigger.
You're bigger
Yeah.
by two.
on the financial reporting software, you have it slated at 338,000. Is that gonna be something like yearly expense?
Yeah, well, yes, with the caveat that you'll see that the note in there says Zobrio and Springbrook. We use Zobrio for cash receipts and Springbrook for tax collections. And we've already contacted Tyler to integrate for cash and for tax collections. So those two will go away once we're fully integrated with Munis.
So what does that mean, that the $338,000 is,
Tyler is the vast majority of that. That's approximately 300,000.
There might be a modest decrease
Yeah, there might be
in
some level
outlying
of
years.
Yeah.
oh, all right, so that could drop. I'm just looking at that where everybody is married to the technology that, all these technology companies know it. I'm afraid drastic increases as you have these programs that you're gonna need and all that and everything, so that's what I was just wondering.
I mean, yeah, you're mostly using Munis, and Munis is by far the largest share of the marketplace for municipal software. I think a good decision. But it's challenging as you're transitioning from different platforms to the new one, but you're making progress.
Why are we still paying for it? Wasn't it put into effect years ago?
So there's the implementation cost, and I believe that article was over $1 million, but then each year for annual support, it's $300,000 for the different modules.
Did we not pay for it in 2026?
We did out of that article, the article that was for over $1 million.
Oh,
The
okay.
last 2 years, it was paid out of that.
Okay.
So it should have been integrated into
Yeah.
the budget. You know,
Yeah.
we've exhausted that article. Now have no choice. We have to work this into the budget.
Yes, thank you. So Charles and I have talked a lot about that Mass Municipal Association report, and I've referenced it during a few of our recent meetings. And just it kind of sets the table in a helpful manner where the headline is "A Perfect Storm, Cities and Towns Face Historic Fiscal Pressures." And the underlying premise is, right, when you're capped at raising property tax revenue by 2.5%, that's a very manageable environment when inflation is below 2%, which is where we existed for much of the 2010s. But more recently, when inflation is hitting 3%, 4%, or even some years 5%, that's when the gap starts to grow between the revenue that you can raise and the cost of goods and services. And we know, healthcare is expensive, pension obligations, energy costs. And so in a higher inflationary environment, that's where those gaps start to grow. And that is not the whole picture, but in large part, right, that's brought us to where we are today. And that's not unique to us, right? Just looking around at other towns in the South Shore, right? Duxbury tried to tackle this recently. Norwell did. Hanson, Whitman, and Hanover has as well. And Haynham did in 2024. So it's certainly a challenging environment to operate in, right? And, there are definitely some improvements we can make in terms of best practices. But to circle back to the point that you were making earlier, Eric, where you said, what if we raise the tax rate per $1,000 by $1, right? If we go from $9.61 to $10.61, that's 10%. So we would have to authorize that as a select board and then go to town meeting, get their approval, and then go to the ballot, 'cause that would be a 10% increase, like well above the 2.5% cap. So I think that's.
I was just throwing that as an example.
Yeah, I know,
It
yes,
works
yes,
out to be,
yeah. Yeah, I got you. No worries. Yeah, so yeah, in terms of exploring a whole menu of options, I think, that would definitely behoove us. And, thank you to Charles and Meg for all the work that you did to put this together. And then, not only did you do this, but you did it in a very compressed time frame as well. And I think, Charles had a good analogy, right, that you're trying to throw darts at the board, right? You're not saying this is perfect and absolute just yet, but it kind of helps paint the picture for where we are and where we have to go. So appreciate you guys doing that. And for the questions on the South Shore Vote Tech, right? So in January of 2025, right, the town was 75% support committed to the new school building design for South Shore Vote Tech. But that was just the first step, because that committed us to the bill, right? But then the next step is how do you finance it and how do you pay for it? So at the most recent town election in April, it failed by 36 votes, but it was blanked 400 times. So I suspect what happened was people were looking for more educational information on exactly what they were voting for and what they were being committed to. So, whether people vote yes or no, or, passes or fails, I would really like to see those 400 blanks converted into a yes or into a no, and get the information to people that they're looking for, because, that bill is going to come due down the road, and we committed to it. So, I don't know, when you have that many blanks and the vote was that close, I think if we feel confident, we've put some really good educational information out there, right? We could give the voters the choice, and I just want to see those converted to yeses or nos. I don't want to see it blanked 400 times. So, I agree with Charles. I think that would be worth exploring. But again, right, we're going to have a conversation. Today is step one, right? Identify where the gaps are and where they're coming from. And then step two, we can identify potential revenue sources and, where cuts and adjustments might have to be made. So one question I had for Charles and Meg is, I think it would be really productive if we could just get everyone on the same page for just step one. So my question is, of the overall town budget, like what percentage is the schools, and what does that percentage incorporate?
So if we're talking from this revenue forecast, the school, I did look at it previously, it was about 68%, and so that would put the town at 32%. As Charlie had pointed out, there are a couple of shared costs that the school does have concerns over. They have concerns over the non-excluded debt service, and they are about 10% of non-excluded debt service. And then for the pension, because teachers belong to MTRS, Mass Teachers Retirement. So even adjusting for that, it still brings the school down to about 61%, town at 39%.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Charles? Okay. And so I was just kind of jotting notes while you guys were, don't want to repeat anyone. Charles, could you touch on what kind of your fiscal management approach was when you were a town administrator in Brewster year to year, and kind of how you developed your 5-year forecast, and kind of how you dealt with, some of the constraints from Proposition 2.5 and debt services and things of that nature?
So, as I think you already know, I looked back 10 years and I looked forward 5 years, right? And, I think it's sort of a situation where, sometimes wonderful select board members or citizen groups or boards and committees like, we want to do this and we want to do that. And my perspective always was, and I like local government, I like the services my community provides, I support them, but I want to make sure they're sustainable, right? And so I would say to the select board, oh, you want to add a new position? How are we going to pay for it? And if we don't have a way to pay for it, how are we going to save money to pay for that new program? So I would really hold your feet to the fire from a policy perspective, because, we're technicians. We do this every day. We're trained. We have experience. We know the functional issues of running a local government operation, but there's a higher level perspective that has to take place, and the select board, the advisory board, ultimately town meeting has to make decisions that are sustainable. So I would always bring up, when I was doing the budget, I was working on a presentation, I would bring up my financial forecast. And just like Meg would go in and say, okay, you want to add this to the expense budget, then the deficit in the outlying years are going to be exposed. And I'd say, hey, how are we going to deal with that? Well, we'll worry about that next year. We'll use free cash. We'll use a one-time revenue. No, no, no. So, that's why you have people like Meg and me to advise you on making the decisions that aren't just for today, that have longevity to them. And, the South Shore Tech is a prime one. I mean, immediately I'd be like, I know there's a bill coming due, and I want to educate the community and the people that I work for, the select board, on what that means and develop a plan to consider that. So me, I would have maybe done a vote to join, but I might have had some conditional language in there that I had to have a Proposition 2.5 override. And if the community really wants to to join that program, there's a funding source. Because right now, what Meg showed you is a fiscal cliff. We have a problem now, you have a problem in 2 years. That's really disconcerting. So educate, demonstrate, document. Those are all just things that we do every single day, so. But, I would say, listen, I was 29 years in Brewster, right? You know that from my resume, and, how did I survive that long? The average lifespan for a town administrator is 6 or 7 years, right? I moved to Brewster a long time ago. I raised my family there. I'm going to finish my life career there. So when I was making recommendations, it was with the knowledge that I wanted to be there, and I wanted to make sure that whatever decision the town made, I'd support in the end what the board wanted to do, but I would make sure that they knew the ramifications of that. And I just feel like, without being able to look on the horizon, you're in the condition that you are today. And as I say, there are better forecasting documents available that I think you should move towards, but that's for tomorrow. But this is good enough for today. But again, we wouldn't be where we are tonight without Meg doing 85% of this work, so.
Yeah, you can't tell on television, but Meg is chained to her desk, so she can't leave.
Could I mention a couple of other things, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So there's a couple of other issues that Meg and I have been talking about. So those are, first of all, I'm going to meet with the department heads tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I did send them a copy. A lot of department heads, one right there, have been asking me to look at the financial forecast, and I said, not before I present it to the select board. But anyway, I did send it out to all the department heads at 5:15 tonight. See? And that wasn't staged. And so tomorrow, I'll meet with Meg and I will meet with the department heads and go over what we did today, because, they're part of the solution too. They have ideas. And when I did the interview with you in October or whenever, and I knew you were going through a lot of change here organizationally, to me, it's always the department heads that keep things going and care and their employees. And in the 10 weeks I've been here, you have a lot of wonderful people. And I don't think that should be underestimated. So, we're going to work on it as a team. We'll do the best we can going forward. Now, after I do the department heads, Meg and I are going to meet with the advisory board next Monday to give them an update. Some of them might be watching, but not all of them. So we want to educate the advisory board, what we see going on for the next few months. And then, I'm a little stressed talking to Meg, is I've got to put a budget together before I leave, right, for my vacation. So the rest of my time before I leave, even if it's for a temporary period, I need to get a budget together. Meg and I have to work with all the department heads to say, what does it cost to run the police department with the same level of services? Because that's the baseline. So we're really going to be working hard to put the budget together over the next few weeks. And then, and the only other thing, I'm sorry, that I wanted to talk about is free cash. Some of these things, I want to get you to this place now. That would be my vision. That might not be attainable. You might want to have a multi-year plan to address some of these problems. Now, you do have free cash. I guess it was certified at $6.3 million. And then you spent $2.5 million at the special town meeting in October. So you have a balance of $3.8 million. Now, we do have one critical issue that I'm dealing with, and, this is transparency, right? We're lying all the cards on the table, talking about all the problems that we see. We have an unpaid unemployment bill that goes back to 2018, and that's closing in on $700,000. I need to deal with that issue on behalf of this community. I have some ideas, but in the end, we're going to owe most of that money. So we're going to have to pay that bill, because speaking of penalties and interest, that is accruing penalties and interest. So anyway, of the $3.8 million, I probably have to project and use $700,000 for that unemployment bill. That leaves us $3.1 million. We know we're going to have some articles on the annual town meeting for important equipment replacements or projects. So, there's not a lot of capacity on the free cash side to deal with the budget in FY '27. Maybe some small items, but for the most part, we're not in my perspective, I'm a little conservative on municipal finance issues. But on the free cash side, there's not a lot of opportunities there. And I'm going to recommend exercising caution as we look at how we're going to use free cash. That's all I got.
Anything else? Meg, you want to say? Steve, anything I don't know?
Just one last question. During your 29 years in Brewster, did you ever find that you were coming up against some of the constraints of Proposition 2.5? And if you did, what was kind of the menu of options you would look at that you felt like were at your disposal?
Well, obviously, I really had a robust capital plan, and I reserved money in my revenue stream for the capital special project costs. And what I would say, what I've been thinking about, and I think I talked to Meg, I don't know, maybe Friday about or something, I can't remember. We talked quite a bit. I was like, oh my God, how are we going to create a sustainable way to deal with your capital costs? Because there's no money really to do that, right? And my idea would be, as we retire that non-excluded debt, or some portion of that, that we use that to finance your capital plan. So, I reserved a lot of money. All my ambulance receipts, I reserved to replace fire and ambulance equipment, so it never hit the tax levy. Just like you kind of do with your retained earnings for your enterprise fund. So as I say, I think seems you're doing a good job in the enterprise fund side. So I would have reserves that finance these things. And then the harsh reality is, you can't run local government our property tax levy increases by 2.5%, but that's sort of like 2/3 of our revenues. So really, our revenues probably increase by less than that, probably on a gross side, 2 to 2.25% per year. So the reality is, I would, have every 6 to 8 years, I would have to go to my voters in Brewster and just say, listen, if you want to maintain the level of services we had, I need an operational override. Now, Brewster's case, they were always $600,000 or $700,000. But I did it in increments that I thought people, was sensitive to their fiscal needs, and I worked with everybody to demonstrate, how we are protecting the program. If I didn't get that override, I would cut those services immediately, because I don't want to create a deficit that's going to roll in to the outlying years that we have here. So it really was very structured and very regimented, but I made sure that all the people that were involved in the process, including department heads, knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, so that I got buy-in. And the same thing with the community. So,
Thank you.
I have to ask Steve, because I know you brought it up a couple of times with regards to the Prop 2.5. Are you looking to, I know there's been talk amongst people of eliminating it. Is that what you're asking on? Is if the Prop 2.5 is eliminated and
Are you talking
increase it?
Are you talking about the state level?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have to overly course correct, because I feel like a lot of times what we do in like public policy and like in elections at every single level is like we always over course correct and finding a happy medium, right? So I don't think we have to go all the way back to the 1980s where there's just no cap whatsoever
Yeah.
and you can run the taps as much as you want. But I do think that there is probably a happy medium where you can recognize that there are going to be years where it's tough to keep up with inflation and it's going to create pressures in your budget. So, I think, I don't think we should go back to the 1980s, but I do think that maybe we could have some more realistic benchmarks and recognize and give municipalities more tools at their disposal to kind of deal with the rougher, more turbulent years.
No, I'm glad to hear that. You don't want to eliminate the Prop 2.5. That was a concern, like, man, he's been bringing this up. I got to ask him if he's looking to eliminate his Prop 2.5. But I do agree that there are tools that you need in your toolbox. I think one of some of the biggest hamstrings, what I'm seeing is one at the state level, but also at the state level is some of the laws that they've imposed on towns that kind of jam us. In my opinion, I think a lot of those laws that they impose on towns, I think, need to be revisited and relooked at, and everything. And then plus, how the town does, operates, and as well as contractual negotiations. I think possibly that we've been a little too freely in regards to benefits and all that potentially, and now it's potentially coming to get us, so.
Yeah, it's tough too, because when you account for inflation in real dollars, the percentage of state aid going back to municipalities is down a lot, going back to 2010 or 2002, however far back you want to go, especially unrestricted local aid, which is what you have the most flexibility to spend in your budget. So it's just kind of like a double whammy of just these pressures coming down on municipalities, and it's tough to navigate sometimes.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I understand like inflation, and all of us are feeling it. The whole thing is that I understand there are employees that want more money, but the whole thing is that how as a town, we put everybody else under that pressure of having to help them keep up when nobody else can keep up with it when the state's not helping, so there's going to require, I guess, each of us individually to sit down with Meg and Charlie, and then give them your thoughts. And I know I plan on doing. And then I think Charlie's going to have department heads in to line item the budgets, and I'm hoping to join some of those and all that and everything. But I suggest you ask Charlie in case I'm not able to make it, that you guys
Yeah.
want to step into it as well. So, and I know I think at the end, excuse me. I think when we're done doing the line item budget, I think we're gonna have to have a meeting on the line item budgets between each department as well. Is that what you're recommending?
I think it's important this year.
Yeah, and to your point, it's not a decision to be taken lightly, because everyone's feeling the pain right now,
Yep.
right? Everyone's trying to make their budget at a household level, at a town level, and it's, there's always that inevitable tension too, right? Because your employees are trying to keep up with
Yep.
like this standard cost of living, and it's difficult too, because, our health insurance split is only 50-50, so our salaries compared to our peers is a little bit higher, but when you consider the total package with the health insurance split, sometimes we lose people to Weymouth, like we lose cops to Weymouth, they don't even take a pay raise, but the overall package, because the health insurance split is better, their take-home pay is better. So it is difficult. You have all these different complicated external factors coming together that make it a really challenging environment. But yeah, everyone's feeling the pain right now, so it's not to be taken lightly, and it's definitely difficult.
Yeah, on
difficult to
the
ask.
health insurance, Steve, I've had conversations with a few people, and depending on how we figure this budget out and all that and everything, but we do have contractual negotiations come up, so, right, I was not opposed to doing some offset, slow offset, like instead of 50-50, 51-49, something like that.
Yeah, and there's always that tension and divide between what your values are and what you
Yeah.
can afford, right? Like a town meeting, right? When we had a discussion about the school resource officers, we all love having them in the schools, right? There's one full-time at the high school, full-time at the middle school, and then the third rotates them on the various elementary schools. And we had a resident get to the microphone during town meeting who was advocating to have one at every
Every
single
school.
school. And we would all love to do that, right? But there's a cost to doing that, and it's just always kind of difficult to juggle, what you would like to do versus what you can afford to do.
I'm glad you brought that up, because, not to get off subject, but in regards to school resources, I was, excuse me, I was wondering in regards to that, especially when people want a little more coverage on the schools and all that, we have the complex between the high school, Furnace Brook, and Martins, and I was wanted, if we could do one school resource officer to patrol that area of the schools, because he's right in the vicinity, you could probably free up another one from one of those schools to cover one of the other elementary schools, in my opinion, so I don't know, something I had a thought on, but, Trish, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to thank you very much. Meg, I know you've done an incredible job. I know it's taken a toll, but I appreciate it. I really appreciate how well you spelled this out for us, Charlie. And I think we needed to see this, and we need to know where we're going, and I agree, things will be done differently in the future. So thank you.
Bob, you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Emery?
Michelle?
All right. All right, well, I want to thank everybody and for this discussion, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, and hopefully we can come up with something that's going to appease everybody, or I would say most, but I'm sure we're not going to be able to appease everybody, but it's try and do our best to make it work
For the town.
Huh?
We're doing the best for the town.
Yep, well, the town, but we also got the employees to look at and all that and everything, so it's, everything's gonna have to be looked at, just do our best, that's all. All right, so there's one thing that we overlooked, but that's because we didn't have really coming up, is the appointment for 171 Canal Street. So do we just make a mention in regards to that, that we're not taking it up?
Yeah,
Move to withdraw, move to allow to withdraw.
So just make a motion, move to withdrawal?
Yeah, I can actually give it to you if you want, and then you can just adopt it. Just give me 1 second. Vote something on it.
Do you have it written out, or
I'll read it to you.
how about if you just read it, Bob, and then we'll just vote on it, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the motion would be, I move that the select board vote to allow the applicant to withdraw their request to locate a new utility pole without prejudice. And this relates to the 32 Stephen Road? 32 Stephen Road pole request.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I got that out of the way. Okay, all right, so, I don't know if you two, we're gonna take up the discussion vote on Cahill zoning complaint. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read through the communications on it. As you have seen, the communications between, I think, Chief Tavares, Bob Galvin, myself, Andrew Stewart, and Mr. Cahill. There's been some issues with some boats parked on a couple of roads. My initial email was out to Bob, and I think Chief Tavares, in regards to, not sure how this is going about, in regards to addressing this issue. I know Chief Tavares had, I think, sent an officer to each home and asked the residents to move. I think he was able to get a hold of one of them, and they said they will move it, but I'm under the impression that boat has not moved. Bob felt that it fell under Andrew to address as a zoning issue. So as you see that I was communicating to Andrew, and I asked him if he could, Andrew communicated saying that he has a process, and there's I guess a form that he wants filled out. And so I asked Andrew to send it to him, and then I think Andrew took offense to it for some phenomenal reason, that I was directing him to do something, which kind of blew my mind. And so Andrew wants to have the board vote on him addressing the Cahill complaint. And so, I don't know if you guys had any comments in regards to the communications between me, Andrew, and everybody else in regards to how this has arisen.
I did review the emails that were in the electronic copy of the binder
Yeah.
that we got. It seems like everyone is in agreement that there is a violation. There just needs to be, the paperwork done just to file a formal complaint. So I'm looking at our handy dandy new town website right now, and I found the form, so. Definitely get that
Wow,
over
that's
to them.
good.
Yeah. So definitely get that over to them. I just went to the building department page, and there's a panel on the left-hand side with documents and forms. So I clicked on that, and then I scrolled down to building department applications, and you'll see on the list that there's a request for enforcement with instructions. So I'm happy to email it over to the gentleman if he needs it, or just I can.
Well, no, that's the thing, as I asked Andrew, send it to me, I was like, all right, Andrew, please send it to the complainant. And Andrew was like, you can't give orders under the town charter. I'm like, holy mackerel. I was like, really? I was like, we got a resident's complaint, all right, I'm trying to address it. And then he sends me the form, I was like, well, can you please send it to the resident? And then it went sideways from there,
Well,
at least
I'm
in my
gonna-
opinion.
Okay, but I also know that it's been difficult in his office. He had a loss. I am not excusing any type of back and forth, but I think sometimes, we need to take a look at that and understand that people are going through things, first of all. And second of all, I think when someone has an issue, one thing I've learned in the last 8 months is that we do have a website, and those forms are on there, and we can direct them without going and having to try to solve the problems with the people involved. And Andrew really can't do anything if we tell him to do something without a resident complaint. So I know my mother came across a building, and so she's like, what should I do? And I said, fill out a form and send it to Andrew. And so I'm just saying that. I just know it's been very, I think it's been very difficult down there. That's all I'm saying. And also, I've been trying to relay that message to residents, we're here to help, we're here to listen. We're also here to direct them to, they're part of this town. There's forms on the website, so.
Yeah, so not everybody's gonna know that. And the whole thing is that upon our discussion with this, and trying to find out who was responsible for what and all that. And the whole thing is that Andrew chimed in, and then Andrew wanted a form. So, but the whole thing is that Andrew, I believe, had the email address of the complainant, so he could have easily sent it to him to fill out. But then Andrew told, when I asked Andrew, I was like, well, Andrew sent it to me. I'm like, well, no, you can do it. And then all of a sudden, Andrew takes it to a whole new level that didn't need to be, which I found, in my opinion, ridiculous. When all you do is just send it over to Mr. Cahill, he could fill it out and be done with it. But he's like, nope, go to the select board if you're gonna order me. I'm like, I'm not looking to order you to do anything, but you
Well,
know something?
I think
I
this
will put it on I will put it on the agenda. We will vote on it to have Andrew send him the form or address it, whatever else like that, and then just be done with it. I just look at that, this is just something that did not need to happen.
Well, I think we've had a couple instances that shouldn't have gone back and forth with you and Andrew, and I just think maybe there's a little bit of a personality issue or something, but it doesn't
Not with
belong
me.
here. I just don't think it belongs here. I think we need to start moving forward, and we need to start working together, and this just creates division.
And I will say to myself that I'm not the one creating the division either, so.
Okay.
So I am going to put forward a motion that, what is it, actually Andrew's,
I just sent
Terms.
Mr. Cahill the form, so we can move on if you would like.
do I want to move on from it, or do I want to fulfill Andrew's request that we should, because, I mean, I don't understand why you just couldn't send it to him, it's just something that just has me perplexed in regards to the way he's been conducting himself. All right, here it is right here. On December 1st, 2025, 9:53, from Andrew Stewart. Mr. Kelly, I will not take directives from individual select board members. I believe that is unlawful and in violation of the town charter. I have provided the information you need to properly refer to your constituents to the building department, as Bob suggested. If you'd like me to direct me to individually respond to Mr. Cahill's email that he sent to you, that request can be placed on the select board agenda, and if a majority of the select board vote directing me to respond to Mr. Cahill for you, then I will do it. So, upon that request from Andrew, in regards to the request being placed to the select board in regards to Mr. Cahill's complaint for zoning, I see Trish has walked out, so I don't know if we should wait on this vote or what.
Why don't you give it a minute? Just had to use the facilities.
We could do some donations.
Yeah, why not?
Never mind.
Are you done perplexing?
No, it's got to read the motion. All right, so I will motion that the select board direct Andrew to respond to Mr. Cahill. Do I have a second? Neither? Okay, that's fine. All right, let's move on to number 6, MBTA. So Bob has put forward a good legal argument why we should not be beholden to this, the state's 30A law of MBTA zoning. And I would like to bring it back for a vote because I'm afraid that when it goes to before the Massachusetts Supreme Court, where it's already passed, that may weigh heavily on them, maybe not to give it a proper decision, in my opinion. So I was wondering what you guys' thoughts are in regards to, as this is going to move through the legal process, in regards to bringing it back to town meeting to see if we can rescind it in case we do have a favorable ruling from the Massachusetts Supreme Court on this. Steve?
So what is the request that you're looking for from the board?
I'm looking to repeal what we passed at October meeting in regards to the MBTA zoning law.
Gotcha. I mean, our case is going to be before the Supreme Judicial Court in February.
Yep.
So I would like to see how that shakes out first before we're out of compliance again, because by being in interim compliance at the moment, we've already clawed back some of the grant money that was taken away from us. So if we prevail in court, then the whole thing is moot anyway. But if we lose our case, or we are at least in interim compliance and can continue to access the grant money that's been taken away from us and The question I would have for Bob is, there are other communities that are still not in compliance, so based on your conversations with your peers and colleagues, is there any action that the state is gearing up to take against those communities?
My understanding is that in January, the Attorney General's office intends to bring enforcement actions against any non-compliant community.
And to refresh on what that could entail, what are some of the enforcement mechanisms that could be at their disposal?
Well, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say they're not in compliance. Compliance is mandatory. And they're going to say, if you don't do it, then one of the options, as they did initially with Milton, is to seek the appointment of a receiver to create such a bylaw. It's going to take a long time, and there's going to be more appeals. I don't know how that's all going to come into play. The one that always concerned me was that if you don't have a rule, and it's required to be a rule, that someone could choose a location in town where we didn't have control. So a developer or somebody might propose in a non-compliant community that they can depict where it goes. So I can't say that's going to happen or it isn't going to happen, but that's another potential. But I think the most likely thing is that they'll seek a determination that those communities are not in compliance, and I believe that they will then ask for the appointment of a receiver to create a bylaw for that community.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the timetable of what happened in Milton, right, where they took their case to the Supreme Judicial Court, and in terms of their argument, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that the law was constitutional and that the Attorney General had the right to enforce it. And then while the Attorney General was pursuing action to put a receiver in charge to pick where the district goes, that's when Milton decided that they were going to choose where it went, and they decided where their compliant district was going to be located. So I would, before we fall out of compliance again and risk losing grant money again or not even being eligible for a lot of applications, I would want to see how our court case shakes out first, because if we prevail, then the whole law is moot anyway and we're in the clear. But if we lose, we at least have a compliant district and we picked where it goes, right? Because I don't understand the argument that, the state drafted this, divisive legislation, but we think the state should pick where it goes over our own local officials. Because what the state is going to do is they're going to pick a location that maximizes the number of new units that can be built as quickly as possible, because that's the stated goal of the legislation. And I think what our planning board did was they tried to throw up as many practical obstacles as possible. And it was kind of funny. I was listening to the radio just a couple weeks after town meeting, and there was someone who loves the MBTA Communities Act who was pissed about what towns like Marshfield have done, because he thinks that they're effectively thwarting the legislation, because they've done things like zone a district and capped any structures at 4 stories where there are already existing 3-story structures. And it's not economical to tear down a 3-story building to build a 4-story building. You're just not going to get that return on investment. So I just think it's kind of interesting if you kind of take in a variety of viewpoints that, I know people are upset that we're a compliant district now, but we've effectively thwarted it with all the practical obstacles that have been put up in place, and at least we have access to that grant money. And what was really concerning was the state has continued to expand the scope for the penalties, where initially we didn't really care because it was just a few grants that we weren't eligible for because we never really applied for them. But that law has been amended so many times, and that list has expanded, and it got to the point where it even incorporated a lot of discretionary state funding. So I just don't want to get hit with the double whammy where there's the financial impact and we lose control of deciding where it goes, right? We can be on the bus or off the bus, and I don't want to be off the bus. But most importantly, I just want to see how the case shakes out first, and our case is going to be heard in February. So that's my feeling about it.
It's, my look at it is that the 3A law is pretty black and white. And I've been hearing the same thing that you have, Steve, that they're gonna bring, the state attorney general will bring somebody in and they'll build it anywhere. But let's ask Bob this. Where in the law or any laws does it state that the state can do that?
It isn't in a statute. It's considered,
So it's a threat made by the Attorney General to try and get everybody to be capitulant to a law that's pretty black and white in regards to that. It's up to the voters to vote on if they want it.
I think we're combining a couple things. Let me just try to answer the first question. The first question is, the enforcement authority is not in that statute.
Right.
Okay. The Attorney General argued that they had independent enforcement authority to enforce every law in the Commonwealth, and that's what the SJC said in the Milton case the Attorney General had the right to do. So if they were to hypothetically bring an enforcement action against another town that's not in compliance, they would ask a superior court, which is a court of equitable jurisdiction, to appoint somebody to come up with a bylaw or something of that effect to take control of the affairs of the town as it relates to this issue and come up with a solution. And that's considered equitable authority. It's not as part of a statute.
So when you say come up with a bylaw, who's the bylaw gonna be, who's gonna create that bylaw? And who's it gonna apply to?
It's going to apply to whatever community that is not in compliance.
So is that a bylaw that the community would have to vote on?
I have no idea how they're going to do this, Eric. I have really, honestly, I do not know. But I know that they're going to try to force those communities to adopt this MBTA Communities Act and a bylaw that's compliant.
Yeah, a bylaw. that-
So in all likelihood, they'll get a judgment saying that the town is not compliant, and then they may try to hold the town in contempt and force the town to come up with a solution under the threat of, if you don't, then could fine you, or whatever the things they can do to the town. But ultimately, they're going to try to ask somebody else to create a bylaw for the town if the town refuses to do it, impose it on the town. I think that's how they'll play it.
Yeah, so they'll create another, or have the courts create a bylaw for the town to vote on, is the way I'm sounding. Much like this 3A that we did vote on twice, or 3 times, but twice it was defeated, and the state had a problem with it, and that's what the state law 3A stated, was that it was up to the town to vote on.
Well, the way they put it in the statute, as they argued in our brief to the SJC, is they put it in a section that requires the town to continue to vote on it. And if you can't vote no, I'm arguing that that creates a constitutional issue and violates people's rights or communities' rights to approve zoning bylaws. If you can't vote no. That's the issue that we're arguing.
So my concern is that if we leave this as is, without challenging the vote that happened in October, which probably should never come forward anyways, but how much do you think with the town passing in October is gonna play a role in the decision-making of the SJC, if we at least not show them that we're attempting to undo that vote from October?
When we passed this bylaw, I wrote a letter to the clerk's office at the Supreme Judicial Court and explained why our case isn't moot because we approved the bylaw. I explained that we had a lawsuit, we appealed that lawsuit, we intend on seeking a ruling. There's no one else we can go to other than the SJC at this particular time to get a ruling on this issue. And they accepted that. They knew that before they accepted the case, and they've scheduled this for hearing in February. So I don't think it's going to have any impact.
So the whole thing is that, let's say the SJC votes in our favor in regards to it, right?
If they vote in favor of it, then the law would be void and not enforceable.
You don't think that they could say, Marshall, you're right, that you took a vote on it, that it is required a vote, but at the end of the day, you did vote on it, you did pass it, so, unless you undo it. My concern is that they're gonna rule this in a way that, because we voted in favor of it, it's still gonna stand, and 139 will be able to develop. And
I disagree.
I don't necessarily disagree with Steve in regards to his thoughts in regards to, they're not gonna change a three-story building to a four, or whatever else like that. But the whole thing is that, look, we all know, I mean, just, if you watch the last DPW meeting with the Board of Public Works, they're trying to find as much available space in the treatment plant they can to expand their sewer system. So the whole thing is that they will run a line down 139 with all, if they would build those apartments there, down to the treatment plant. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Pembroke and whoever else will probably connect to it as well. So my look at it is that, in my opinion, is that I think we should go back to town meeting to vote to get a no vote from the citizens on this, and then and hopefully the courts will side with us in regards to our right to vote yes or no, but twice we voted no, and then we don't have to worry about this unless the state comes up with a creative way to implement this on us in another way.
Well, I'd like to answer your first question, if you don't mind. You said, what's likely to happen if we win? I think what is likely to happen is what happened in the Milton case. They ruled that the guidelines were null and void because they weren't enacted in compliance with the State Administrative Procedures Act, and they were null and void.
Yeah, they're null and
Then
void.
the state had to go, then the Housing and Livable Communities had to enact emergency regulations and then permanent regulations and comply with the requirements of the law in order to have valid regulations. If we win the case, I think the law will be void and the legislature will be forced to go back and correct the deficiencies in the law before it can be enforced.
I don't believe that, because it required a vote of the citizens, and because.
And if we,
And like Steve said, in much of people's fears and all that, is that they're withholding grant money from us. So I think some people, and especially other matters regards to hiring a person to come in and pick a spot, which I don't believe is accurate, that people felt compelled to vote yes on it. And my concern is that the SJC could say, yeah, you know something, it is a requirement that the citizens vote on it, which Marshfield did is 3 times, and the third time it was a yes vote. That law, that they will agree with us, but the whole thing is I could consider Marshfield voted yes for it the last time, that we have already established that zone where somebody can come in and put something in there.
remember, if the law is ruled null and void, the zone we adopted is null and void.
I don't think they're gonna void, say the law is null and void, it's the process of it in which the state was trying to cram it down our throat without acknowledging that the law said that there was a vote to be processed in it.
I would just offer the following. The state has the right to put multifamily housing in Section 3 of Chapter 40A as a subject that local zoning can't regulate, just like they do with churches, nonprofit educational institutions, farms, daycares. They could have put MBTA multifamily housing subject to certain conditions in subjects that local zoning couldn't regulate, and there'd be no local vote required. And that's one of the arguments we make in the brief. The flaw in this law is that you didn't put it in that section, and you didn't change the requirement there be a local vote. You just told us that we had to adopt it and we didn't have any choice. And there were less offensive to the law options that you needed, that the legislature was obligated to follow. So I agree with you that the way the law is structured is flawed. I think we've pointed out the issue that we think demonstrates that it's flawed, but I can't prevent the legislature from fixing it and putting it into the right section or correcting the voting issue.
No, I was going to say, I don't think the law in itself is flawed. I think it's pretty black and white how it's written. I think the flaw is with depending on how it was, I won't go as far as saying the Massachusetts Supreme Court, because I don't know what was presented with them in totality in regards to that case in Milton, that they came up and said it was constitutional. But the whole thing is that the language in there pretty much states that the community gets to vote on it. And then, like we came across not too long ago, the 2017 Charlie Baker speech to general counsel and what his goals were, and that means, which is incorporated into the 3A law, that it was going to reduce it from a 2/3 majority down to a simple majority to pass. And I don't understand how the Massachusetts Supreme Court can miss that unless there wasn't argument in front of them at that time. So, but now it's pointed out to them. My look at it is this, Bob, not to start repeating it over, but just they say will probably agree with us, but the law as itself can stand, but because we said yes, still have the go-ahead to do it.
Remember, I
Even if they, not to cut you off, but even if they said, let's put it this way, even if the Supreme Court rules not favor, and they say, you know something, the state will put it under a different chapter or whatever like that, then you know something, that's on your state and your state officials.
I think I have a solution for you. If we win the case and someone claims that because we've passed this bylaw, we're still subject to it, you all schedule a special town meeting in 2 weeks and we repeal it.
Yeah, but how much is that gonna cost us?
Yeah.
It would be, if you're worried about someone trying to jam it down our throat even though there's no valid law, then we could have a town meeting in 2 weeks and it would be worth the money.
Even if they put up, how can I say, even if they put the required paperwork in to do it before we went to town meeting?
No, we would, remember, you could do it in 2 weeks. You can call a special town meeting in 2 weeks and we could have a special town meeting and repeal that law. By the way, if we win this case and anybody were to seek to try to enforce it, everybody would vote to repeal the law. Every community. And there might be some communities that still want this type of housing, and they'll call it something else. They'll call it a multifamily housing law, but it won't be MBTA multifamily housing, and they might leave it in. But our community, I think, was trying to defeat it in the best way it could, either by not passing it and suing, or by passing it and continuing to sue, but putting it in a location where it just can't be built as a practical matter. And that's what a lot of communities did.
All right. Trish, got anything to say to it?
So you're just looking for, at the town meeting, to have it back out there so that people vote on it again?
Yep.
So when would be the latest that we could put something on the warrant?
I think you could reopen the town meeting warrant sometime in the spring. Probably like 30 days, the end of March. We're not likely to have a decision, though, I would say. If we argue this case in the first week of February, the SJC, I think, has 120 days to issue a decision. I don't know how quick that'll be. The Milton case was argued in October. The decision came out just over 2 months later. It might not get it into the warrant.
I was just thinking that way.
No, I
just
believe I
calling
thought
this-
about that myself, but I'm like thinking the timeline like just Bob said. It's February 2nd, it's probably gonna take them 2-3 months. So by the time, so I mean, like Bob said, Trish, we can reopen the warrant when we want, you know, within a certain time frame for a town meeting. So if you want to wait,
There is one, remember, because this is a zoning act, there is a requirement that the planning board conduct a public hearing.
yes, you need like a 2-week notice for them, right?
It's in Chapter 48, Section 5, and I don't recall it off the top of my head, but the planning board has to conduct a public hearing on an article, and I could look it up and read it to you verbatim, but there is a public hearing requirement, and
Okay.
you need to get a few weeks for them to do that.
Yeah, I think it's at least 14 days, I think, for them, for the hearing. So if you don't want to vote on it right now, then we can take it up
In January?
even after.
Yeah, remember, you have an annual that's open in January, and then you have a special that opens for a week during February, so.
Yeah, we can open it up and.
Oh, yeah, you'd be able to open it up really through the end of March.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Glad we had the discussion. Okay, number 7, discussion and vote on temporary appointment of special town council Elise Zoli from Wilson Sonsini for the Clay Pit Road landfill solar project. So, Bob, you want to, you or Charles?
Well, I'll take a quick crack at it, and then I'll let Charles jump in. So when we began negotiations with NextGrid, which is the successful proposer for 23 Clay Pit Road, the original plan was to have a power purchase agreement, and for the town to purchase all of the power generated by the facility at a very advantageous price. And given the complexity of the document and the specialized nature, I recommended that the town use outside counsel. We had used outside counsel on the other side of Clay Pit Road when we entered a prior power purchase agreement on the Sylvester Ray landfill site. It was a different lawyer, but she had retired, so that original lawyer recommended Elise Zoli. She was with a different firm at the time. She's now in this Wilson Sonini or Sonsini. So it has become clear that the town does not have enough power need, and therefore doesn't have to, really can't, shouldn't, and doesn't have use for all the power that we previously agreed to purchase. So they've now proposed the same or very similar terms in a lease. And given the complexity of the issues and Elise's experience in this particular area, I recommended to Charlie, and Charlie and I talked about it, that we contact Elise Zoli again and see if she was available, to make sure that if there's any lease amendments, that those lease amendments adequately deal with the prior PPA and make sure that the terms are fair and reasonable. And Charlie and I have had a couple discussions with her, and we've had a couple discussions with her and NextGrid. She has revised the lease amendment in a manner that I think Charlie and I both believe is advantageous to the town. And we're looking for your confirmation that we can continue to use her services. She's an extremely well-regarded energy lawyer. This is principally what she does. She's a specialist in every way, shape, or form, and I'll let Charlie give you his impressions.
What he said. But, I think we're making, I don't want to get too in public, the negotiations, but I think we've made good strides with, you had authorized Bob and I to finalize these negotiations, and we're working on something that it would be, we feel, very advantageous to the town. But, to do it, we want to make sure we do it right. And, she's a specialist. She has these skills. I don't think the services that we need are going to be that extensive or that long. I think we're coming to conclusion quite quickly, actually. So I would encourage you to support this special appointment.
The issue I have with the contract is it's too broad. It should be narrowed down to the solar contract. It seems like they can be used, the services can be used for anything that's presented to them.
We're really only asking her to look at this lease amendment issue.
I can't speak for Tricia, Steve, but for me, I need the contract tailored to just the solar site.
And, Mr. Chair, the motion that we wrote, we did say for the Clay Pit Road landfill solar project. And so I think that's the only thing that I'm seeking your permission to use this council on, that one project.
Well, on the RE on this, it says representation of the town of Marshfield. So
Yeah.
there's nothing specified in regards to the solar project on the Sylvester property on Clay Pit Road.
We have no intention of asking her to do anything other than this one specific thing.
I think your motion could narrowly define that, what permission you give me.
All right. All right, the motion, and then we will reword the contract.
Yeah, I'll have Bob help me, but I'll write some conditional language as part of my signature line. Does that work, Bob?
Yes.
There's a couple of questions I had to ask on these contracts. Many, many pages that were in here.
Oh, I know.
This is bad radio.
Is, on page 4, but it's going in further, I think. I think it's broke up into sections here. The Yeah, right here. Finally, because of our role in the Commonwealth's and U.S. climate innovation economy, in our annual review from time to time, as we understand your goals, we will endeavor to identify opportunities for you to expand your investors, relationships, strategic alliances, and joint ventures, e.g. with respect to co-investor collaboration and syndication opportunities that all at no cost. In particular, we have suggested connections with Inclusive Prosperity Capital and Clean Energy Ventures, both with respect to insurance opportunities. I mean, with that itself, I mean, I understand that there's climate innovation, the solar panels and all that, but with that, it just seems that, are they in it to make money? I mean, like, for other people in regards to these things? I mean, is there a conflict here that we're looking at?
No, none whatsoever. Actually, the original lawyer had a conflict and recommended Elise Soley, who did not have a conflict. So she has zero to do with NextGrid, okay, and only would represent us. And let me just kind of give you an example, and this is without getting too much into the details. She has the ability to value energy attributes that have specialized value and make sure that those energy attributes, which we were going to receive the benefit of, financial benefit of, in the power purchase agreement, are monetized and included in the rent. And that is brain surgery. When if you're a general practitioner, you see people at your office, she's a brain surgeon, and this is her particular area of expertise, and she's kind of like a leader. She used to be a senior partner at Goodwin Proctor, which is a very reputable Boston firm. Then she went to Jones Day, and that's where she worked at when we used her before. Now she's at Wilson Sonsini, and I've heard her described in some of these things as being absolutely phenomenal, an intellectual powerhouse, and an amazing person. And actually, when Charlie and I sit there and listen to her talk about what she thinks we should be doing in these things, she's thinking on things that we would never even think about.
No, I mean, because I think my concern is that they seem to be also practicing in the investment field. So I don't know if they had any ties to the person that may potentially develop this.
I think she would.
road.
Just this firm is a international law firm or a national law firm, and in order to take us on as a client, they have to run a conflicts check, and it goes through a very, very detailed review before they can actually work for us. And they would disclose to us if there was any conflict of interest with our interests, and they don't have one.
Okay. Page 2 in another section. If requested, billing rates applied to a client's matter will appear on our invoices. In addition, because of our special expertise, a limited number of attorneys and legal staff may bill at hourly rates higher than standard rates. So I would like to have that changed, if requested, that they should state.
They'll give us their hourly rates. Just so you know, when she worked for us before and worked on these power purchase agreements, I mean, her billing rates were, $1,000 an hour. Okay. That's, a testament to how her services are valued in the marketplace. And she's working for us. And it also means that she's doing this as quickly and expeditiously as possible because, it's not a huge change here. It's just making sure that we're getting the same value in one deal in another.
Page 4, another section of this, advances, talks about if they have to put money, if something's going to cost more money, that the town or anybody that they're work it for, we'll have to come up with a certain denomination. Do you think that the town's gonna have to come up with any money, advance any money to them for looking into this at all?
No, they haven't asked for any retainers or anything like that. I mean,
Well, they haven't signed a
Charlie, do you want,
contract,
do you want to talk about the money part of this or what we're dealing with? But
I don't want to do it where we are, and.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to talk about.
this
our
is going to be just a small fraction of the value that we receive.
I'm not talking about what we'll be getting, it's just that in here it says advances, so if there's something that's gonna cost them money, they're gonna come to the town.
Yeah, if they had to employ an outside consultant, I think they were advising us they would have to pay for that. They're not envisioning any of that. As a matter of fact, she's given us a memo with the solution that we're looking to propose.
Yeah, I think we're talking about a modest amount of time left to finish this, because, and it's really going to just be several more hours of all of our collective time. It's pretty modest scope that we need her to finish up this project on. But financially for the town,
It's well worth it.
I'm looking forward to presenting that to you.
All right, Steve, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Trish?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right, I move that the board vote to approve the temporary appointment of special counsel Elise Zoli from Wilson Sonsini for the Clay Pit landfill solar project, pending that the contract be changed to specify just the solar aspect on Clay Pit Road, and that the billing rates will show all hourly rates on it. Does that sound like a fair
Yes.
motion, Bob?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right,
Aye.
Aye.
all right.
Thank you.
I move that the board vote to approve with gratitude the following gifts. So these are all listed out. I guess we can just take it as a one vote. Town of Marshall Veteran Services requested permission to accept donations in the amount of $700 from Korean War Veterans Association. The donation to be used to provide assistance with health and welfare, morale, and financial need of our veterans. I think all these say that. Yeah, so we'll just go with the dollar amount. The Town of Marshfield Veteran Services requests permission to accept donations in the amount of $100 from Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Hanlon. Town of Marshall Veteran Services requests permission to accept gift card donations in the amount of $200 from Fidelity Investments in memory of Thomas Merrigan. The Town of Marshall Veteran Services requests permission to accept donations in the amount of $7,000 from MCRCO.
Marshfield Community Rib Cook-Off.
Thank you, Steve. The Town of Marshall Veteran Services requesting permission to accept donations in the amount of $100 from Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Steele in memory of Robert Lanzetta. The Town of Marshall Veteran Services requesting permission to accept donations in the amount of $200 from Mr. and Mrs. Edward Dwyer. Town of Marshall Veteran Services requesting permission to accept donations in the amounts of $100 from Mr. and Mrs. W. Dalia in memory of Robert Lanzetta. Town of Marshall Veteran Services requests permission to accept donations in the amount of $100 from Mrs. Judy Fish. And just to read the bottom of it, once again, donations will be used to provide assistance for health and welfare, moral and/or financial need of our veterans and their dependents. Steve, do you have anything to say?
No, thank you for the donations.
Absolutely. Trish?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, so do I have, make a motion to accept the gifts to Veteran Services? Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
How did Meg escape? Someone give her a key?
Charlie told her to stay.
I advised her to run.
wearing sneakers.
This is for a donation to Ventures Memorial Library. Dear members, this is dated December 10th, 2025. Dear members of the Select Board, on behalf of the Ventures Memorial Library, I'm writing to formally request your acceptance of a generous $4,000 donation from the Carolyn Flynn Memorial Fund. Carolyn was a cherished member of the Ventures Memorial Library staff for nearly 20 years, a dedicated librarian, and avid book club facilitator. She is fondly remembered for her calm presence, keen intelligence, thoughtfulness, wit, and her warm, infectious laugh. Since her passing on October 29, 2009, her spirit has lived on in the memories of both staff and patrons. The family has requested that the donation be allocated as follows: $2,000 for children's programs and $2,000 for adult fiction, with an emphasis on mystery. We are sincerely grateful for the generosity and continued support of the library. Thank you for your consideration, Cindy J. Marcoux. So I'd like to say thank you to Cindy in regards to that. Was it? Yeah, for the Veterans Memorial Library. So Steve, do you have anything to add, a comment?
No, thank you for the donation.
Trish?
No.
Okay. I move that the board vote to approve the gratitude of the gifts of the Ventures Memorial Library in the amount of $4,000 from Carolyn Flynn Memorial Fund to be allocated as follows: $2,000 for children's programs and $2,000 for adult fiction, with an emphasis on mystery. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
So this is an acceptance of 3 donations to the Council on Aging. 12/8/25, Patricia Dwyer, $200, general donation. Korean War, 12/8/25, Korean War veterans, $700, general donation. 12/12/25, Luchetti's Service Center, $1,500, general donation. So thank you to all. Steve, any comments?
No, thank you.
Trish, any comments?
No.
I move that the board vote to approve with gratitude the following gifts to the Council on Aging: a gift of $200 to the Council on Aging from Patricia Dwyer, a gift of $700 to the Council on Aging from Korean War veterans, a gift of $1,500 to the Council on Aging from Luchetti's Service Center. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, discussion, vote to approve a one-day all-alcohol beverage license for North River Art Society for an event on Saturday, January 17th, 2026, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. At 157 Old Main Street, GAR Hall, in Marshfield. So it's, the applicant's Michael D. Poyela. Date of event, January 17, 2026. Hours of event, 6 to 8, 157 Old Main Street, the GAR Hall. Description of event, fundraiser party for winter exhibit, opening reception, all alcoholic beverages checked off, liability insurance to Marshall checked off, copy of tip certification check detailed, written event narrative checked off. That will be held indoors. Insurance and certification of the tips. And that's it. I move that the board vote to approve a one-day all-alcoholic beverage license for the North River Art Society for the event on Saturday, January 17, 2026, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 157 Old Main Street, GAR Hall, Marshfield. All pertinent documentation has been received with this application. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 12. Discussion vote to authorize the extension of a sale of alcohol for 1 hour from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve, 12/31/25, for the Section 12 liquor license establishments as requested. The following restaurants, clubs have submitted requests for permission of a 1 hour extension of the regular closing time for New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2025. Please also consider granting approval to any requests from restaurants, clubs received prior to December 31st, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees, as well as clearance from the treasurer collector that taxes are current. Marshfield Lodge of Elks, 2494 Rafferty's Pub. So with that, I move that the select board vote to authorize extension of the sale of alcohol for persons and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19, 2025, contingent receiving the necessary forms and fees as clearance from the treasurer collector that takes current. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
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 Number 13 is discussion vote on annual renewal of liquor license for restaurants, clubs, and package stores. Bob, I think you said that we do not have to read all these, if I'm correct?
Yeah, we had to make sure we get them all on the agenda because the open meeting law requires you to list out by name and address all of the businesses and entities that are looking for new license or renewals. But in your motion, all you have to do is refer to the business entities that are listed on the agenda.
Okay, so I move that the select board vote to issue liquor licenses for restaurants, clubs, and package stores for the persons and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees, as well as clearance from treasurer collector that takes are current. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
It should be taxes. Sorry, that's a Scrivener's error.
Yes, shall we just say treasurer collector's office?
Yeah, treasurer collector's office, too.
Treasurer collector's office that all taxes are current?
Yeah.
Should I read it again, or are we good?
No.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Me being me.
Discussion and vote on annual renewal of license for common victuals.
You have that treasurer collector's office and taxes in this one and the next one, too.
Okay, so there are two businesses in here that I want to leave out because I will vote no on it. And that is Rocky Roads and The Hop. So
Do you want me to just make the motion, and then Trish, if she wants, can second it, and then you can just vote no to make it faster?
yeah, you can do that.
Okay. All right, I move that the select board vote to issue licenses for common vicular for the persons and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19th, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees, as well as clearance from the treasurer collector's office that taxes are current. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, votes 2-1.
Discussion vote on annual renewal for licenses for lodging. I move that the select board vote to issue license for lodging for the person and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees as well as clearance from the treasurer collector's office that taxes are current. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion about renewal of licenses for peddlers and fortune tellers. I move that the select board vote to issue licenses for peddlers and fortune tellers for the persons and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19th, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees as well as clearance from the treasurer collector that takes, the treasurer collector's office that taxes are current. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that the select board vote to issue licenses for Class 1 and Class 2 for the persons and entities listed in the amended select board agenda filed with the town clerk on December 19, 2025, contingent on receiving the necessary forms and fees, as well as clearance from the treasurer collector the treasurer collector's office that taxes are current. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, acceptance of meeting minutes, vote to accept meeting minutes from November 18th, November 25th, and December 10th, 2025, open meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
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 I think that's it. I think we covered everything. So I move to adjourn this meeting of December 22nd at 8:20 PM. Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody.